7 minutes past 6, so we'll get started. Noswaith croeso, good evening, welcome. Before we begin, may I advise of a few housekeeping issues. This meeting is being live streamed and will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website as soon as possible after this meeting. Can I also ask all members that mics and cameras are switched off until you are invited to speak. For those attending remotely, if you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function. For members present in the chamber who wish to speak, please raise your hand physically, and when invited by myself to speak, press your microphone button once. Please also ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. With regard to voting on recommendations, if there's no dissent to a recommendation, I'll accept the silence as agreement. If an electronic vote is called for during the course of the meeting, then advice on how to participate will be provided. Moving on to agenda item 1, apologies of absence. I'm aware of Councillor Dodd prior to the meeting. Do we have any others? Councillor Carroll.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Thank you. Councillor Burnett.
I'm not sure Councillor Lloyd-Selby has been able to join.
So possibly Councillor Lloyd-Selby. Is she logged in? Not at the moment. Okay. Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? Chief Exec, do you know? No. Moving on to agenda item 3, is Council happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September and the special meeting of the 11th of November? Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. If I could draw members' attention to the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September and to page 332. This obviously refers to the incident that took place at that meeting in which I was asked to leave the room after expressing an opinion that was shared by many people across the Vale of Glamorgan. Obviously, that was a rather unedifying spectacle that has led to considerable criticism of this authority and did not, in my view, reflect this authority in a good light. I am in the process of arranging a meeting with the authority's monitoring officer to discuss that incident, not because I seek retribution or anything of the kind, but merely because I think it's important in a democratic system that we are able to have political debate and that matters that may be considered controversial or even unpopular to some are able to be discussed, because that's what debate is about. So I very much hope that if one thing can emerge from that incident, it's that it isn't repeated and that we learn that even if we disagree on certain issues, it is important for the debate to take place and for members to be able to voice their opinions, because that is something that we need to encourage rather than stop. Thank you.
Do we need to take a vote on these minutes then, Councillor Carroll?
My apologies, Madam Mayor. No, the terms on the paragraph on page 332 does reflect what happened accurately, so I'm happy to accept it as a record of what took place.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, announcements. So in October, I gave out certificates to children who attended Barry Bike Club, which the Active Travel Team and Vale Housing Community Investment have run alongside Pedal Power. The club promotes and runs cycling sessions throughout the spring and summer in Llawn Park. Bike Club aims to reduce health inequality through targeted cycling support to promote physical activity to young children. It was heartwarming to see that staff had arranged for some children without their own bikes to be given one so they could ride to school. The smile on one boy's face was wonderful as he rode home on his new bike. Also in October, Food Vale held a fair trade breakfast, which I was excited to attend alongside Fair Trade Wales and local fair trade groups. Fair trade is a global movement to ensure producers, especially in developing countries, receive fair prices for their products and have better working conditions. At the end of the breakfast, all attendees wrote their pledges to encourage fair trade on a fair trade banana. And I was really pleased to find that many of the Vale school lunches from the Big Fresh contain fair trade ingredients. Last week, I attended Shift in Perspectives, which is a powerful survivor photography exhibition at Art Central Gallery. This exhibition was created in collaboration with Steffi Andrews, a professional photographer who volunteered her own time, as well as Vale Domestic Abuse Services. The exhibition is created by 8 incredible women who have shared their story of domestic abuse through photography. The exhibition brings forward the lived experiences of survivors in the Vale, shining a light on the realities of domestic abuse, coercive control, stalking, and what rebuilding looks like afterwards. It is an incredibly powerful yet hopeful exhibition that had a deep impact on me. It is on until the 10th of January. Try to show survivors that their voices matter and attend if you can. I know the Chief Exec and Lisa don't have an announcement, but Councillor Wilson, you have an announcement?
Yes, I do. Just wait for the microphone. Okay, thank you. Members will be aware that on Friday of last week, we provided an update on the car park charges at Penarth, Cliff Walk, Coldnap and Bonamore in Barry. A report will be considered by Cabinet on Thursday, recommended that the charges introduced in September be suspended temporarily. We have taken this stance as we have listened carefully to residents and local businesses, and it's clear that the introduction of car parking charges at Penarth, Cliff Walk, Coldnap and Bonamore has raised concerns that we need to respond to. Whether we charge for car parking at key locations is not up for debate. I want to make that clear. Our intention has always been for visitors to contribute the largest share of parking income to help maintain our coastal resorts. But we do know that car parking charges need to strike the right balance between raising the income we need to protect key services in our resorts and destinations and supporting the people and businesses who rely on these coastal areas every day. When introducing the charge in September, we didn't get that balance right. People have spoken honestly about how the time has affected them, especially during the autumn and winter months, which is an already difficult period for coastal businesses. We introduced the charges after months of debate and consideration, but we recognise that bringing them in just as daylight shortens and visitor numbers fall place an extra pressure on traders and residents at the one time of the year. It is important that we listen to concerns and pause the charge until the spring. Gives us a chance to reset, listen further, and ensure any further approach is fair, better timed, and supportive of the community. We still think that the introduction of charge in locations is the best decision for the Vale. At the same time, we recognise that our implementation could have been more flexible, and we are committed to maintain this flexible approach moving forward. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'm aware that Councillor Haynes, you have a petition. Would you like to introduce it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's a petition for the council to bring allotments to St Athan briefly. I could go on a bit more about it, but it's basically we're asking the council to identify and designate land available for allotment provision in St Athan. There is a need, and a lot of people have signed it. So there is actually more signatures than are here, but someone lost a bit of the petition. So I hope you will be willing to accept it.
That's great. Can you bring it forward? Thank you. Will you have one yourself, Councillor Haynes? Will you have an allotment yourself if they come?
If my long COVID clears up, I'll have an allotment again, but I haven't signed it because I'm not too sure whether I can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, we have one question from the public, who I'm told is online. Mr. Smith, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you very much, Mayor.
You're welcome.
My question is regarding, you can hear me okay, yes?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. My question is regarding the changing facilities at Cowbridge Leisure Centre. Please can you advise when the changing facilities at Cowbridge Leisure Centre will be brought up to the standard of the other changing rooms provided at Barry, Penarth and Llantwit Major leisure centres? Cowbridge Leisure Centre, as I'm sure you are aware, plays a significant part in the health and well-being of the population of the Cowbridge area, and as I understand, is the most visited public building in Cowbridge. However, the quality of the changing room that haven't undergone a major upgrading since the centre was built almost 40 years ago badly let customers down, and, in my opinion, the Vale of Glamorgan Council also. I had expected the recently published placemaking plans for Cowbridge to highlight both the importance of the facility and the need for improvements, but the facility is not highlighted in the report. I'd be grateful if you could explain its exclusion, particularly given the importance of leisure centres in other councils in Wales' placemaking plans. The clearest example of this that I've seen being the joint levelling up and placemaking plans in Caerphilly, resulting in the construction of a new leisure and wellbeing centre. I've spoken to representatives of Parkwood Leisure who run the facility, who are fully aware of the issues at Cowbridge, but I understand the responsibility for refurbishment works is the council's. I've therefore also met up with council officers who acknowledge the issue but cannot provide me and other users with a timescale for works to refurbish the change rooms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Smith. And this is to Councillor John. Councillor John, Cabinet Member for Leisure, Sport and Wellbeing.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr Smith. I would like to thank you for your question. I'm aware that you are a committed user, being a former customer of the month, and I'm also aware that you represent the views of the majority with regard to the condition of the existing facilities. I understand that you have met my officers and representatives of Parkwood Leisure, who have all been keen to see the changing rooms refurbished to enhance the facility and further increase attendances. I feel it is also important to share with councillors that Cowbridge Leisure Centre is presently experiencing its highest ever attendances, having significantly more visits than any other publicly provided facility in the town, and is delivering over 600,000 of social value per year, a growth of 12% in the past year. I would like to highlight to councillors that, unlike other councils in Wales, our partnership with Parkwood does not require a revenue subsidy to provide our leisure centres and generates a revenue surplus. In addition, the leisure management contract is presently delivering 5.75 million in social value that includes health benefits, social and community, and individual development. Mr. Smith has mentioned placemaking. Now, basically, the placemaking plans, as we all know, are between the 4 town councils in the Vale of Glamorgan, and we as Vale councillors only play a part in this when it comes back to us on Cabinet. And these are projects put forward by the town council and the residents of Cowbridge. So I'm rather surprised that you've not been in touch with them. Maybe you weren't aware of that. I'm therefore very pleased to confirm that the council is committed to refurbishing the changing rooms at Cowbridge Leisure Centre within the next 12 months. This will complete the refurbishment of all changing facilities in our leisure centres. I'll ask my officers to contact you, Mr. Smith, to confirm our intentions and to provide an estimated refurbishment date. The works will be funded by a variety of funding sources, including Pride in Place, internal capital funding, Section 106 funding, and subject to confirmation, and other grants and contributions. Thank you very much.
Councillor Perry? Is there a problem?
Yeah, I listened to the answer. Cowbridge Leisure Centre is awful. That's going back years.
Okay, this is a question from the member of from a member of the public. You're welcome to ask your own question.
Can I? So
no, you can't say anything, I'm afraid. Sorry. No.
I know I can't. I know I can't. That's
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I'd like to continue with the agenda. Thank you. Thank you for your question there, Mr. Smith. Moving on to agenda item 6, reference from the Draft Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report 24/25 from the Governance and Audit Committee of the 15th of September. Leader, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as mentioned, this is a reference from the Governance and Audit Committee, who presented their draft annual report, which covered the year up to end of March of this year. The report is attached at Appendix A. It, simply speaking, laid out how it had met its terms of reference. One of the interesting things is there was a comment in terms of attendance and engagement, but in terms of the Governance and Audit Committee, absolutely superb attendance, and it's always an interesting discussion on that. I said it's a fairly straightforward reference, and I think it goes out saying that it's, as Governance and Audit, it's a really, really important committee for this council going forward. So for us, really, this is being sent for our consideration, but I would move that we endorse the report with our thanks.
And I'll second that.
Okay, I see no hands raised, so that report is endorsed. Moving on to agenda item 7, reference from the Audited Statement of Accounts 24-25. Lida, can you present this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the report is to update the council on the completion of the 24-25 audit, which was with an unqualified audit opinion, which is an excellent outcome, with a few key amendments to accounts and next steps. So the report includes the audit progress, and the audit commenced in July 2025, following completion of accounts on June the 30th. And the audit of the accounts is now complete. A number of amendments have been agreed and are reflected in Appendix A as of the 20th of November. The Big Fresh Catering Company audit is ongoing, and there's an outstanding pensions issue, but it's not considered material to the council's accounts. Materiality is set at 5 million for the accounts, with a triviality limit of 280,000. But there are lower levels of materiality applied to related parties, £10,000, and remuneration disclosures are £1,000. The key financial headlines in the report are the usable reserves. There's an overall reduction to 10.487 million, down from 88.589 million, down to from 88 million plus to 78.102 million, and there are movements both ways. There's a 12.523 reduction in the general fund and earmark reserves, and a reduction in capital grants of 299,000. There's a £360,000 increase in the HRA reserves, and there's also been an increase in usable capital receipts of 1.975 million. Of this, 1.2 million relates to City Deal. The usable reserves of the council are the non-cashback reserves that are predominantly used to capture statutory accounting adjustments. These usable reserves are reduced by 2.974 million as a result of the audit amendments set out in these accounts. Pension liability increased from 10.522 to 17.310 million. Property, plant and equipment, these total 975 million after IFRS 16 adjustments and revaluations. So in terms of key amendments, the auditor's report is attached as an appendix to the accounts and sets out the audit opinion. As I mentioned, that's unqualified. Some key risks and materiality thresholds applied, and the amendments made to the accounts as part of the audit. In terms of an adjusted misstatement, the auditor's report also sets out an unadjusted misstatement, which is explained briefly as there was a £580,000 appropriation between the HRA and Children's Services, which was funded from grant, and the correct approach would be to unapply the grant until the replacement of the property took place. However, as correcting this accounting would impact a number of figures in the accounts and will be rectified in the 2025-26 year. In any case, it's intended that the misstatement is not corrected for 2024-25. In terms of governance and audit, governance and assurance, the annual governance statement, no significant changes, with reasonable assurance on that. External audit assurance, there's no fraud or legal compliance issues identified. The next steps is for sign off by the Mayor of the letter, the 151 officer, leader and chief executive, and the Auditor General, sign off scheduled for the 3rd of December. Recommendations and from Audit Wales and a lessons learned report will follow for future Governance and Audit Committee review, and that was already mentioned in their reference, and I look forward to that discussion. And so I would therefore move the recommendations, Mayor.
And I'll second those.
Councillor Johnson?
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thanks very much. Thank you for the presentation on the audit. I'm not a member of this committee. I'm not a member of the scrutiny committee at the moment, but I have got an idea of the work that's been going on. And I'd just like to say thank you very much, especially to our staff and to Audit Wales for the work, because our budgets as an enormous organisation is very complex, and it's very good again to see somebody that's unqualified and without any issues at all yet again. Just one thing that has been noted in the questions, about 580,000, and that's been explained very clearly about the process, the grants process, and the departments that are part of this. So I'm happy to accept that this is corrected in next year's report. And under the, so I remember from the conversations that have been had about the regional committee, audit committee. This has been a problem for a while, with the details and data coming in late. So hopefully that'll be sorted out soon. But in terms of our budget, this document is factual. It shows resilience, and we've spent a few million more from our backup account, and that's been invested in our housing stock. So I don't see any issue with this at the moment, but of course we'll be looking at this year's finances, because it's a very important document, and of course we'll be looking again at everything in March. But thank you very much to all the staff for a very good work on this work, and I'm happy to recommend this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yes, I think the staff, our teams have done a superb job in delivering these accounts. I think that if they were honest, you know, slightly later than we would have liked, but in view of the way that everything has had a backlog since the pandemic, we are moving forward on that. And as I said, it's good to have a clean bit of account, so an unqualified outcome. And so yes, I just thank you for your support.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised, so that report is approved. Moving on to agenda item 8, to consider the following proposals from the Executive in relation to the Council's policy framework and budget. We'll take each proposal individually. So A, review of Statement of Principles Gambling Act 25/28. Leader, can you take us through this?
Yes, if I can get my microphone to work. I apologise in advance, Council. I hope I'm not spreading my germs amongst you this evening, but if I start coughing too much, I'll go and join from upstairs. The reference from Cabinet on 2nd of October actually had come from Statutory Licensing Committee on the 9th of September to them. It was a requirement of the licensing authority to publish a statement of principles governing its licensing policy for a 3-year period. That's part of the Gambling Act of 2005. This was needed to be done by 2025. It relates actually in total to about 13 betting shops and a number of amusement centre premises. So a consultation was undertaken, and there being no consultation responses, the report was referred into Cabinet, and Cabinet has referred the report to full council for approval. So it's a very, very simple housekeeping report, and I would move approval.
And I'll second that recommendation.
Thank you. Great, that report is approved. Moving on to B, final draft Vale of Glamorgan Council Annual Self-Assessment 24/25. Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this seems to have been going around for a long time. Originally, the self-assessment of the performance of the annual delivery plan starts off in the summer, and so that there are various directorates, there are scrutiny affairs, all becoming involved. That goes out to consultation. The draft report came back to a joint scrutiny committee, and there were recommendations made. The final draft went to Cabinet on the 4th of September. From there, it went to Governance and Audit Committee, where there was a tweak in terms of moving the final outcome of the engagement and insight assessment within the final draft annual self-assessment report should be moved from good to fair. So that went back to Cabinet. That then has come back to here. So in effect, this is for us now to approve the final draft Vale of Glamorgan Council self-assessment for 2024-25, and I would move.
And I'll second that recommendation.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In my view, there is considerable improvement that this authority needs to make in terms of its performance. Just this evening, we've heard an announcement in which this authority has admitted it made a significant error with regard to parking charges and the impacts that that has had on local businesses across the Vale of Glamorgan. And the authority is proposing to suspend a decision that it has taken in light of the impacts that it has had. This is an example that has generated much media attention of late. Obviously, there was a report in the press which signalled that a local business had suffered a 40% drop in trade, they claimed, as a result of these charges. But this is not an isolated incident. Across the board, there are issues with this authority's performance. So I think there needs to be much more honesty and realism when it comes to how this authority rates its own output over the course of a year. Those parking charges were first considered in the last year for which this self-assessment relates. So I shan't be supporting an assessment of fare because I don't think that it accurately reflects the experiences that residents have of services provided by this authority.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll talk about the report that's in front of us. So the process this year of self-assessment is different due to scrutiny changes introduced by the council earlier this year. Just like the rest of the changes, we'll need time to consider if it is leading to an improvement. So for the first time, all committees met together to discuss the draft documents, and that happened back in July in a joint performance scrutiny committee. There was a great deal of frustration in trying to discuss the detail of this document, considering there are over 500 targets to assess, and therefore there was no way to discuss in detail in a committee of this kind. In the meeting, I drew attention to how close the council was to the threshold, and therefore asked questions about the methodology and the moderation as the council decide how to describe its performance as good or moderate. When the threshold is 85% and you get exactly 85%, it's easy to be cynical. I also highlighted the number of red indicators in some services. For example, the council failed to meet half of the measures for wellbeing objective 1 and over a quarter for wellbeing objective 3, but remained in the green colour. In the end, the lack of credibility of this report is a problem for the whole process, because everyone seems to feel that the council is marking its homework, so to speak. And the truth is that external statistics prove the true state of our population. We heard this last week with a publication of the Welsh Index of Deprivation and the increase in LSOAs in Barry from 3 to 7, which is the worst 10% in Wales. So in short, Mayor, it's up to the officers to be satisfied with the work and any lessons they learn on behalf of the council services as we move forward. So at some point, I'd like to see an evaluation of the whole self-assessment programme by local authorities in Wales, because I'm unsure yet about the value of these reports. Thank you, Mayor.
Leader.
Thank you. If I could come back on that. I know that Councillor Johnson has engaged fully in the process and normally has made some very incisive comments. This is a fairly new process, and I think we are still developing it. And I think as we go forward, some of the things around how we mark in the sort of the red, amber, green, the rag module. Funny enough, I was involved in another county last week, and they were bringing up the same sort of issues in terms of the assessment. I think that before, initially with scrutiny committees, it was quite difficult because in terms of performance, a scrutiny committee would get their own area to look at, but then wanted to talk about something in a different area. And so the thinking was, well, if we bring them together into a joint committee, it doesn't, people won't be restricted. But actually, I think in some ways that could potentially have become a little bit cumbersome. So it is something that we need to look at in future. I think that Councillor Carroll's uninvolvement or lack of involvement in the process last year probably shows in his misinterpretation of the data this evening, and the fact that that whether or not we hit budget is probably a deciding factor, but specifics in terms of policies that we introduce is probably not something that we would be coming up with. So I don't know whether or not we need a vote, Mayor, but I reconfirm my support for the annual self-assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll? No problem. Okay, we'll take this to a vote. Amy,
If we're going to have a vote, can we have it recorded then,
of course. I think they're all recorded now, are they not? Thank you. I didn't know. Thought we did. Let us know when you're ready, Amy. Okay, Amy. Councillor Drake, I think you haven't voted currently. Sorry, don't worry. No problem. Oh God, that's a second. Okay, Amy, can you display that? Yep. Councillor Gilligan, at the moment it hasn't recorded your vote.
I did have problems. It locked me out and locked
No
me
problem.
back in, but it is showing on my side now 4.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gilligan. That's great. Okay. 29 for, 20 against and 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Okay, moving on to 8C, Vale of Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan 2021 to 2036, Housing Growth in Barry Consultation Report. Councillor Sivanyanam, can you take us through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present this report of the consultation on the housing growth in Barry as part of the Replacement Local Development Plan. This is a critical stage for ensuring that the Vale has an up-to-date planning framework and balances the needs of all our communities, particularly in respect of housing, but also in terms of infrastructure and environmental protection. So members will recall that the preferred, can you hear me? Sorry, I keep going out, sorry. The preferred strategy for the RLDP was agreed by full council in September.
It's okay, I believe.
Is that because you couldn't hear? Oh, sorry.
No, I think they just want to speak, Councillor Sivanyan, and we can hear you really well, no problem. It would be best if we could let Councillor Sivanyan finish, if possible.
It's only because I was looking up, so I saw you, so
keep going.
So members will recall that the preferred strategy for the RLDP was agreed by full council in September last year, and it initially had identified a key site northeast of Barry. But there were concerns on deliverability, and so we decided to consult on alternative sites. And those are the land at Northwest Barry, the land at Neptune Road, and the land at Hayes Lane. The sites were subject to a public consultation. There were 159 individuals and organisations who made representations, which, as an aside, these were fewer objections than the proposals from the site for the site at North East Barry. However, I acknowledge that there were obviously valid concerns raised by local residents as part of the public consultation, and at the scrutiny a couple of weeks ago, residents made some very powerful and relevant objections and comments about these particular sites. And I do understand residents' concerns about capacity of infrastructure, and those concerns, I think, have been listened to. There are specific concerns about increased traffic congestion at Waycott Cross roundabout and the impact the proposed quay site at North West Barry would have on this. But I do want to reassure members that developers, not just on this site, but on the other sites west of Barry, will be required to fund off-site highways improvements to deal with traffic issues. So this is something, that we are aware of, and we do want that to be considered, and they will be, part of the planning process going forward. In addition, I acknowledge that the new development will generate a demand for school places, and there will be a requirement for developers to fund an increase in school capacity where that's needed, and equally around, health, access to health, GP surgeries and so on, primary health care. We are in constant conversations with the health board, so that they are aware, of the development, and that this will this may present additional needs. Barry is the largest and most sustainable settlement in the Vale, and is identified as a key settlement in our RLDP hierarchy. So it is appropriate, in my view, that Barry accommodates a level of growth commensurate with its position. The need for affordable housing is critical. There are around 7,000 households on the council's register, with 4,000 expressing a preference to live in Barry. Nearly 900 households are living in inappropriate housing in Barry, and I think that these three sites offer a real opportunity to provide, much needed homes. The Vale is within a national growth area where housing and economic growth are expected. Options for growth in Barry are limited. The opportunity to allocate deliverable large-scale brownfield sites near railway stations really no longer exist. The sites put forward, though, represent the best options for housing following, a robust assessment, in a sustainable sites. So I would urge members to support these recommendations today and include these three sites within the deposit plan. And this will allow us to bring another report to full council on the deposit plan, and allow the public and members and organisations to have their say on the plan as a whole. So I would move that this report is approved, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sivignano. Councillor Johnson.
And I'm happy to second, Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a report about housing and progress in Barry, and I'm responding as a Barry councillor. Councillors heard about the draft report of this version of this report. Only myself and Councillor Collins responded. I wasn't present in the scrutiny committee, but having listened back to the video, the councillors in that meeting heard from Councillor Cooper about the 3 applications, the good, the bad and the ugly, to be honest. I would like to support his analysis supporting the scheme for Neptune Road and raising concerns about the lack of facilities and public transport in the Bendricks. The most controversial one, of course, is the one northwest of Barry in Waycock Cross. I'd like to remind people about the history of this particular site. In the prospective LDP back in 2012, the Conservatives built 700 houses around the Waycock Cross into the scheme, including 200 to the south and 500 to the north at the Walters Farm site. During that election, Labour took out a full-page advertisement in the local press against the Conservative plans. And when they won the election, they took out the 700 and redistributed the houses around the Vale. So the Conservatives have installed the Waycock Cross in the plan, but Labour took out the site. And now both are doing the opposite to that. Labour is trying to build 360 houses on the site, and the Conservatives are opposed to the plan. Plaid Cymru continues with our concern about the suitability of the site for housing for a number of reasons, really, including the loss of the green belt, traffic problems, the likelihood of over-reliance on cars, and a lack of public transport. So at the end of this speech, I intend to move a motion to remove the site from the scheme. I would also like to mention 2 other elements, if I may. A local development plan is important because it provides a framework for the private sector to develop land. No plan, no framework. But for me, as a councillor, the more important aspect is that we can see a strategy to help people in need. There is a tendency to refer to the number of people on the housing list. I'll repeat, there's a tendency to refer to the number of people on the housing list as evidence, but in responding to the consultation, I asked for confirmation of the number who do not have suitable housing. So we heard that 900 households on the high bands in Barry. So I would like to know exactly how we address this particular need. This is a different to the number of social or affordable housing or part of the local housing market assessment. On behalf of completeness, I would also like to note a point by Councillor Hooper in the Place Committee, namely the number of sites where planning already exists but which are not part of the proposed scheme. 2 prominent examples are the college site on Colcott Road and the Western Galway at Gladstone Bridge. Indeed, there was a discussion about the Western Gateway in Cabinet on the same day as the current report. We've talked about the site since 2017, so why isn't it part of this consultation, I wonder? Mayor, it's not a windfall if we know about its existence, so it should be part of the scheme. So returning to my previous point, I would like to move an amendment to remove the North West Barry site from the proposed scheme and ask for the vote to be recorded. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Okay, we can now discuss the amended motion. Councillor Collins, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I attended the event at Castleline Community Centre last week regarding the site over the Bendricks. While I've no objection to housing, we need it, it is necessary. I am concerned about the lack of community facilities in the area. I have raised this previously. There are no community centres over there. One of the things residents have told me they sorely need in that area is a shop. The nearest doctors or dentist is in Carrickston or the waterfront or Surrey. It's a rather remote area of Barry in a way. It's not as connected as the rest of Barry. The public transport system isn't great. As far as I'm aware, there are no buses on a Sunday. There are no buses between 4:30 and 7:30 weekdays. So if you're going off to work on the bus, you're going to have trouble getting home. So you will need a car if you move out there. What I would like to see in future plans like these is the consideration for the needs of the community. Give them the facilities they need. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now discussing the amended motion to remove Waycott Cross from the plan. Okay. Moving on to Councillor Marnie. Did you want to speak now? Councillor Marnie.
Yeah, so many buttons I got to press. Is obviously a necessary delay. You know, you got to turn off the movie camera, the microphone, take the hand down, and press the button to speak. So that's why there's always a slight delay. It's not because I'm being tardy in any way. No, I'm waiting to speak about the whole thing, not necessarily the amendment here. So I'll put the hand back down until we get back onto the main event. So what I wanted to speak about is Hayswood Road and the hypocrisy of many who don't want to see houses built in some areas, but quite happy to be first in line voting for them to go in other areas of green belt and places.
Did you want to speak on the amended motion, Councillor?
No, I'll wait. We'll be going back to the original LDP one.
Thanks. We'll move on to Councillor Campbell, please.
Hello. So the Cabinet member mentioned about the onus going on to developers in regards to funding the infrastructure improvements. However, we've seen multiple times before, specifically in regards to the Golligor estate in Rhoose, where S106 money has been put forward for improvements on Waycott Cross and other roundabouts in the area. However, these improvements have been done, but we haven't seen any improvements in regards to vehicular travel in the area because it's just not enough. There's nothing been put forward by the council to improve the infrastructure going forward. So where is the council going to take some accountability in regards to improving the infrastructure? We haven't got any active travel going that way. We haven't got any public transport really in regards to the Western Vale. And then the Cabinet member spoke about Barry. There was a very much emphasis on Barry, but there was no speaking about the Western Vale and how it's going to impact the Western Vale. You know, you need to give some kind of respect to the Western Vale residents as well going forward and how these developments are going to impact our residents as well from that area.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. To clarify, I'm speaking to the amendment and I reserve my right to speak to the full motion as well. The proposed development at Waycott Cross, or the proposals to include that site within the RDLP, is deeply regrettable. I have long opposed developing this site, primarily because of the impacts that it will have on traffic at the Waycott Cross junction. I use that route frequently, and it doesn't matter what time of the day you're travelling down 5 Mile Lane, there is always a significant possibility that you will be caught in traffic at that junction. It is, in my view, at capacity and exacerbating the situation by adding an additional number of dwellings to that area will only serve to make matters worse. This appears to be a view shared by the public too. Just reading the document, there were 129 respondents who made comments on land at North West Barry, and all bar 3 of those respondents signalled opposition to the plan. They were right to do so, in my view. That site is clearly unsuitable for development, especially of the density suggested or proposed. So, for this reason, I shall be supporting the amendment. I think that the site should be removed from the RDLP, but I would also make a plea to members of this authority. I accept that taking decisions is difficult, and at times unpopular moves may have to be made. But it is quite clear from the engagement with this process that there is significant public concern about developing that site. I note in the Cabinet member's comments that she seemed to suggest that there was less opposition to this proposal or this package of proposals than to the previous site to the east of Barry, but I would nonetheless state that 129 people is a considerable number and we should listen to them. So I shall be supporting the amendment and I would urge all members to do likewise.
Councillor Franks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we need to recall why we are considering this site. It was namely because the Cabinet failed to properly assess the North East Barry, or more properly called West Dinas Powys site. To remind members, the Vale wanted to include 900 houses just off Argyle Lane in the vicinity of Richard Gwyn. Because that proposal failed and had to be withdrawn, we're now looking at Northwest Barry, and as has eloquently been indicated, that Labour were totally and utterly against this site, Northwest Barry, and the Conservatives were totally in favour of it. Times change, don't they? So the chaos caused by Cabinet on this and other important matters shows that the Cabinet is tired and generally not competent. I would urge that this site be withdrawn from consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Hi, good evening again. At the scrutiny committee, one of the residents raised concerns regarding floodwater on that site at Waycock Cross. I'm not quite sure how robust our models are in terms of flood risk assessment and drainage. So I think, and this will come back later when I speak on the full motion, I think I've got concerns on that, and that we haven't quite got the expertise as residents of certain parts of the Vale of Glamorgan who are experiencing more flooding incidents at the moment will testify to. There seems to be something wrong with our planning system when we build more houses and get more flooding. At the scrutiny committee, it was stated that the residents are expected to own cars. Now, as I said at a previous meeting, we don't need to reduce the use of cars. We need to reduce the ownership of cars. We're supposed to be in a climate emergency. That means we need to do things drastically differently and urgently. Now, Holton in the Netherlands is a suburb of Utrecht, which is designed specifically for encouraging active travel. Nothing we do in Wales is designed for active travel. It's stuck on the end and it doesn't work and it's underfunded. So we're going to have more car journeys going through Waycock Cross. Waycock Cross is at capacity. Culverhouse Cross is over capacity. It's always blocked up. And yet we're also going to mitigate. And that's always the same. Time and time again, more housing, more development, more warehouses, and the capacity will be mitigated. Time and time again, we see more and more congestion, more and more delays. And the mitigation, if there is any, doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. It's a myth we keep being told time and time again. Now, I quite like the idea of this, the Vale Council. If we all actually voted instead down party political lines and supporting the Labour Party, we do what they did in Wrexham and have a real serious think as individuals rather than as parties, with the Labour Party using its majority with the support of Land Tweet First to push everything through because, well, you've got to support the party and you've got to support the council because we've got to start looking as individuals. So clearly there's going to be more car trips through Culverhouse Cross, more through Waycock Cross. There's going to be a new junction onto that busy road, which is going to be yet another bottleneck. As people of Rhoose and I say Athan testify, Waycock Cross is severely restricted. already, and you're talking about an extra junction and more cars. So I will support the motion because it's the right thing to do. Of course, I'm independent, so I'm a free thinker, but I will urge the people of the Labour Party to think seriously about this. You are allowed to rebel. You are allowed to go against the Labour Party. You can also go and join your party or even the Green Party, but there's no need to vote down party lines. Let's look at the facts and look at that roundabout. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Franks, I'm guessing that's a legacy hand. I imagine so. We'll go to Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And speaking on the amendment and speaking as an individual who has their own thoughts and processes, we need to consider future generations here. This is about affordable housing and additional housing, which is desperately needed in Barry, as Councillor Johnson has stated previously, 4,000 people on the waiting list, but also 900 people in desperate need of new homes, desperately. Does this directly address the issue in the best way possible? I would say no. I'd say the original plans did, but that's being watered down because of representations from the public, and quite rightly so. But when we've already cut over half of the homes in the plan, Plaid Cymru want to gut it again with over 3/4 gone from the plan again. This is absurdity. How can we ever build homes if we continue to gut plans like this? Do we need more public transport? Do we need more active travel? Absolutely. I completely agree with the point made by Councillor Perry, but we can't address every issue right now, right here. Right now, right here, what we can do is we can think for ourselves and agree on the amended plan with reduced number of homes on Waycott Cross, and forgive me, I was not around for when the opposition in the previous LDP to Waycott Cross was around, but I'm thinking myself that we desperately need homes in Barry and that we need to agree that homes are for everyone. It's not just for older generations. We must build, or there will never be enough homes for young people in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just got a few points to make. I mean, obviously, no one wants houses next to them. Okay, we're all aware of that. An awful lot of people in Barry, in other places in the Vale of Glamorgan, live in fairly modern houses. In fact, when I looked at the census of 1901, census of where my house was supposedly almost born 5 years before that, in 1896, all the people came from England, they came from Ireland, they came from all over the United Kingdom, not just local people. What you've got to realise is that we evolve as populations, we change, and we got to reflect that. Households are different now as they were over 100 years ago, and we got to reflect that. We also are aware that car usage is changing. We are aware that more and more people use electric vehicles, and yes, there will be more demands upon our infrastructure in that extent. But equally though, more and more people will be using active travel techniques as well. Now, some of us are on the planning committee. And obviously, when it comes to the planning committee, any application, we will consider all the mitigation circumstances. We will consider conditions. Those conditions can make an application become more viable. And this is something that we do as a planning committee, as no number of you, even some of you have spoken, are aware of that. Clearly, though, we also got to address that the Vale of Glamorgan is a very popular place to live. Demand exceeds supply. House prices have been going up much greater than inflation, than the cost of living, isn't it, in general. We know that house prices have gone up, enormously. You might have read recently that someone was in the press about a £4,000 house is worth over £2 million, and that's over a space of 50 years. That's much greater than even the average rate of inflation. And that's because demand for housing is greater than supply. Demand has gone up through the roof. You also talked about the fact that we got super output areas, okay, and we got more deprivation. That means, of course, is that the cost is a pressure And if we don't supply enough affordable houses, very few people will get on that housing waiting list in order to get a house. As you rightly said, 4,000 people on that waiting list. Lots and lots of people on that waiting list are in huge demand. I'm sure most of you as councillors have caseloads, have questions where you're really frustrated, where you want to give people housing and you can't find it. And that's everywhere in the Vale of Glamorgan. No one here has really come up with real viable alternatives to this site, I feel. This site is something that we should consider along with the other sites, and therefore I fully support this RLDP.
Councillor Sivanyanam, you have right of reply to the amended motion.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is about delivering affordable homes. I think I've outlined this evening, but those that attended scrutiny or listened to scrutiny will have seen that the report gave details of how the mitigation for these developments is an ongoing process. So, for example, there's a strategic transport assessment that is ongoing that will look at mitigating around the roundabout for looking at congestion issues and so on, and we'll look at public transport and so on. So these issues, as Councillor Goodjohn has already said, are not issues that I can tell you are going to look like X, Y, and Z now. These are things that will be part of the planning process. The important thing here is that we balance the need for housing, which is a chronic need for housing here in the Vale of Glamorgan, particularly in Barry, with the other issues around environment, around transport. And I think we've hit the right balance here. Councillor Johnson mentioned the Colcott development and why that couldn't be included, as it couldn't be allocated in the RLDP. It is part of the windfall. If we allocate it, then we need to find more windfall. So this for me hits the right balance. The fact that Waycott Cross was opposed by Labour when it was brought by the Conservative Party was not about the fact that Waycott Cross was not deliverable at that stage. So and I can't comment any further than that, but that was it wasn't deliverable. The site was still deliverable, and what I brought here today is something which is definitely deliverable. There have been some changes, but it is deliverable as a site. So I'm opposing this motion because I want to see houses built in Barry that are affordable for the people that need it. And those are the people that don't respond to consultations. So they're the many hundreds of people who are not responding to this because they need housing. So I oppose this, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I called you Madam. I don't.
Councillor Sivanyanam summed up, so we'll move on to the vote. No problem. So we will now take a vote on the amended motion of removing Waycott Cross from the RLDP. Amy, can you set up the vote, please? Yeah, Chief will take us through this.
Yeah, so with the report in front of you, you're looking at recommendation or resolution 3B. So I suspect you are going to be voting on whether you endorse the action set out in the consultation report. It's B that changes. Instead of including 3 potential housing sites as allocations, you are voting to include 2 and to actually remove the Waycott Cross. So you're either...
Is everyone clear on that? Okay. So Councillor Johnson's amendment, if I'm correct, was to remove the Waycott Cross North West Barry site from the RLDP. So your vote this evening is on whether you vote to take that section out of the RLDP. So if you're voting for, you're voting that the Waycott Cross development is taken out of the RLDP. Is that correct?
That's what I said, yeah.
Put the hand up and got confused.
Yeah, so it's for...
Chief was right.
It's for the motion as put forward, the amendment to the motion. or against the amendment to the motion. So it's green if you're for the amendment, and red if you're against the amendment. Everyone clear?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you've got the option of abstaining as well.
Councillor Morgan, we're waiting for your vote. And Councillor Lovelock-Edwards. Thank you.
One more.
No, I think they both go. Okay, can we show the results? So that's 24 against the motion, 23 for the motion. So we will now revert back to the original consultation report. Okay. Councillor Marnie?
Thank you. So I can talk about Hayeswood Road now, can I, presumably?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, yet again, well, I'm just going to say the same old things. We realise the need for new houses. All our houses were presumably on virgin land at one time. And it's not a case of I'm okay, Jack, and, you know, who cares about anybody else? It's not a case of that. Yet again, we're proposing to build houses on such a concentrated, unsuitable areas with no infrastructure, no doctors, no new dentists. And I've just listened to a previous councillor there saying, yes, we recognise that new dentists and new doctors will be required in new school places. I don't see any. I don't know. If somebody can quote to me how many new doctors there are with all the new housing we've had, I'm not aware of any, certainly not in the area that I represent. Hayeswood Road is literally on the border of Surrey. You've already built a new housing estate there. I lived in the Bendricks for 13 years. There's nothing there except the transport cafe. Absolutely nothing. As has been said before, it's an intermittent bus service, heavily subsidised by 106 monies that when they run out, the bus services will disappear, of course. The road infrastructures aren't there, no new doctors in the area. The school places we've seen at Sully School. £1 million being ripped out of the budget for Sully School that basically hasn't been upgraded since I went there 50 odd years ago. It's been given to a comprehensive school at the top of Barry. Now, I do appreciate that you have to provide secondary school places as well, but to take £1 million out of a £3.5 million budget for upgrading Sully School, for example, to a school where the education department of the Vale admit that it will only be providing places for 5 new people, students from Sully, it's just disgusting, quite frankly. And this is the sort of thing that's happening. So don't keep wittering on about, yes, we recognise that we need new doctors, we need new roads and all this, and none of them ever appear, do they? So why on earth would you build another large community to add to the other ones that you just made down at Hayeswood Road on the Bendricks there, when you're not providing anything? That little community is almost cut off. It's separated from Barry by the rest of the docks, as you know. Anybody without any transport is kind of stuck there, other than walking. Not that there's anything wrong with walking, but it doesn't suit all situations. Stop putting new housing on the same places in such a concentrated area. You just cannot do it. It's just bunging everything up. There aren't the services, you're not providing them, and you're paying lip service to consultations as usual. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ernest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything particularly this evening, but I think referring to the Bendrick site, I know Sully pretty well. I represented the ward for a number of years, and to be honest with you, very little has changed in Sully, except that there's been more and more housing built. I think the councillor who spoke a moment or two ago is right. Hayes Road is a dead-end road. It leads absolutely nowhere. We've had the major development of the former Sully Hospital. That has been beneficial, has provided a considerable number of new homes where the hospital used to be, and they're permanent homes. But again, there is no or little transport. The one bus that goes down there is very infrequent. It tends not to run at the weekend, and I always feel that the people living at the bottom end of Hayes Road are isolated. And I think to build new houses here, however desirable they may be, they will not get the level of service that any new housing development should have. And that's access to schools, to medical facilities, to doctors, to a whole range of activities. And those people who don't own a car, and there are quite a lot of people who don't own cars even in this day and age, they are struggling when they have to get from somewhere like Hayes Road to other parts of the Vale to just do their everyday tasks. There's no shopping down there at all. And of course, what's more, that site is adjacent to a major industrial estate. The Vale has its own waste site down there. There are a number of other very important industrial sites there. Not a particularly good background, really, for the establishment of new housing. So I think, Madam Mayor, I also would not seek to approve that element of the plan. Thank you very much.
Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to have a little chat about when we're talking about infrastructure with developments. There are things that this council is responsible for. There are things that this council is not responsible for. Health facilities, this council is not responsible for. However, this council lobbies and negotiates on behalf of people. That is why, as Councillor Johnson mentioned, we are seeking to take forward the Western Gateway project, which includes a health and social care hub. Now, the health hub is not our responsibility, but we recognise that it's necessary. We are lobbying the health board to provide a health facility at the Eagleswell site in Llantwit Major. And not that long ago, we were talking to them about the potential for it to be allocated within the replacement LDP. And if we can possibly get that to happen, we will. It's not our responsibility, but we see that having that sort of facility is essential. In terms of transport, that is not our responsibility. However, again, we lobby. We look to use the limited funding that we have for bus services, and as a result, we have 2 bus services now that go to the Bendricks. That's the 88 and the 94. The reason I know it is because I catch them. And what's quite amazing is that actually people on that bus have said to me, what are those houses, Liz? And I said, well, they're council houses. And actually people have been really impressed by the quality of build. And by having more houses there, we have been able to make a case for increased bus services. Is it perfect? Well, it's not, because we haven't actually got green fields everywhere that we can build on if we would want to. We, as anyone who's been to briefings in relation to the LDP or the now replacement LDP, will know that the process is that we invite candidate sites and they are brought in to us, and we then look at which ones are most suitable in line with our agreed strategy. An agreed strategy that has gone through this council. The agreed strategy laid out that the previous site that had been selected was not suitable, that it could not be brought forward. So we have to look at other sites. We don't just go and say to people, well, we'll have that field. We'll have that field and we'll build on it. So what I will say is, in other conversations, which were quite unexpected, when people that you don't expect say to you, what's happening with such and such a site? But they've heard about it. And you think, oh, so, is this going to be today's argument? But actually, what that conversation is that individual's hope of getting out of an overcrowded flat. It's that person's hope of their children getting a decent place to live. And it's people looking to the future. But we are very restricted in the amount of housing that we can provide for them. So I make no apologies of allocating these sites. These sites, through the planning process, will address the concerns that people have voiced, that did voice through scrutiny. But our first commitment has to be to the people of the Vale, particularly those who need affordable housing, to make sure that there is provision for them. And if you get an opportunity to go and have a look at some of the houses that we built recently, then please take it up, because they are really top quality. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just to let people know, we are getting close to the time. Does everyone in agreement that we can take this 10 minutes longer? Is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Mayor. As Cabinet member responsible for social housing and the building that's happened, the Bendricks is becoming more of a a community, if you like. We've had 2 lots of social housing built there now, besides the older social housing that was there, and the next amount of housing built over at the Bendricks will be as one of the partnership between Lovell, Cardiff Council and ourselves. So it is going to be, another sort of medium size site, which is really desperately needed for people who are desperate for social affordable homes. And obviously the councillors who are responsible for that area, the bigger something becomes, the more likelihood you're going to have the infrastructure there that's required. So these houses, and I'm sure that the councillors there have managed to have a look at the homes themselves, and if they haven't, they're very welcome to get in touch with me, and we can perhaps have a visit at the homes. They're future-proofed homes so that people won't have to move if they become disabled, and they're obviously of Welsh housing quality standards, so they're really high-quality homes that people are really proud to have, of something that's a permanent home for them if they're renting off us. So, I understand your concern about perhaps there not being a shop and stuff like that, but I think the bigger the community, the more chance there is of being a shop there. The transport is there for people, and I just think, this is one of the areas that we need to develop more of, and I'm quite happy to have a chat with any of the councillors who represent that area. If they want to come and have a chat to me about their concerns, please feel free to get in touch and we can do that. Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Hi, yeah. I'm going to come back to what Councillor Wilson said. Did he say he's been in the same house since 1896, or did they mishear that? High house prices are a burning issue. Generation rent, yeah, I know about it, okay? And it's not just this country, it's in countries where a lot more houses have been built. The Dutch have got an acute housing crisis. It's a global phenomenon, right? Where we're building houses on the planet, there is still a housing crisis because house prices have risen and risen and risen and risen. No one can name a country where that's not a problem. The problem with high house prices isn't caused by a lack of supply. It's more about finance. Housing has become an investment, an asset. It's no longer about housing and homing people. It's about profiteering. Okay, so by building more houses, you're increasing profits of a few and not the many who stay as generation rents. So those members of the Labour Party who were sympathetic of Jeremy Corbyn and that regime that was in charge of the Labour Party, think about what they were saying then in the Labour Party about why we have such a huge problem with the housing. Okay, and it's not about supply. Okay, it's about greed, and it's about housing becoming an investment for profit of the few, not for housing of the many. Okay, so let's just let that sink in. Building materials, we're going to build more houses. Building materials are going through the roof, not just because of Brexit and most of our timber comes from Sweden, but the more you build, the more quarrying you need to do, the more your material prices go up, the more your labour prices go up. So you're actually building inflation into the housing system. Repairs become more expensive as well. We got told about inappropriate housing in Barry, but there was no definition as to what inappropriate actually means. Is it like Phoebe, Monica and Rachel in Friends, where you've got friends sharing houses? That's suddenly now inappropriate because everyone wants their own flat. How many on the housing waiting list just want to move to a different house in a different part of the Vale of Glamorgan? That's not answered. How many on the waiting list are currently housed by the Vale of Glamorgan? How many by our partner housing associations? We don't get in that sort of detail. It's not great detail, but we just skim over the surface. There's 7,000 on the waiting list, and some of them are duplicates, perhaps. Every new house we build brings a cost to the council. Can we actually afford the financial strain, given that we're going to have to shove up council tax by 5% this year because the Welsh government haven't given us enough money? Rachel Reeves apparently isn't being completely honest with us. It's being reported, and not just her CV. Then I'll go on to move on a little bit because I only get 5 minutes, so I'll just change topic. In terms of flooding models that get brought up, we are using outdated data. We're not using climate predictions into more storm events in the future with climate change, which is predicted, but we don't quite understand yet. And we generally underestimate risks. So we see new housing built and flood problems getting worse, even though it was all supposed to be mitigated. Rather like the transport problems at Rhoose Cross have been mitigated, yet they've got worse. Then we got to talk about the overall environmental footprint, or the carbon from building these houses. Now, we know in London and in the Vale, housing and flats particularly are being built by foreign investors. They're being bought by foreign investors and left empty. There are houses all over Cardiff and Swansea and particularly London that are empty, being bought off plot by the billionaires, the few, to exploit the many, but often they're left empty. And we've got a huge empty home problem. Okay, we're beginning to address it, but only just beginning. Land value tax might be the answer, rather than messing around with council tax. So, and then we go on into scrutiny at the end of my 5 minutes. As I said earlier, there's no capacity at Waycott Cross. There's no capacity at Culverhouse Cross, yet we're going to bring more people to live in the Vale. Now, the projections are that every area of Wales will increase its population. Well, we certainly can't rely on moving people around by car. It's a very, very inefficient system, yet we're not investing in the transport network. And I disagree strongly with the leader who says that transport is not our responsibility. Well, of course it is. We're the highway authority. We subsidise public transport. We decide what is built where and when. So, yes, transport and having people move, accessibility. Let's not talk about movement, moving people. Let's talk about accessibility. It is definitely our responsibility, and we've been really poor about that. And thank you, Mayor, for that little winding up signal, which is much better than being spoken over. But we must be building on core transport routes, which we haven't yet built, and we're building on railway lines that could potentially be. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
everybody.
Councillor Perry.
And, I'll talk to you later.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor, for giving me another opportunity to speak. Just a few points, really. The RLDP goes through a process. That process is largely constructive by using and utilising our planning professionals. Those people have got degrees in this, they've got professional qualifications, they go through a series of stages. They look at sites to test their viability. We'd consider other sites. If they're not viable, they don't get on the list. I would also point out to Councillor Perry about transport infrastructure. I think, to my knowledge, Transport for Wales are spending £1 billion on developing electrification, on plans for new stations within Wales. We are certainly bidding for a station as well, and we are trying to do our best here. Clearly, we have got a huge demand for housing, as I said before. The Vale of Glamorgan is a nice place to live. I think we can all agree upon that. It has amazing destinations in it, and I'm very lucky to live in one of the best towns, if not the best town, in the UK. I myself am a product of council housing, of highways council housing. Lots of us come from council housing, and I'm very proud to come from that stock. My grandfather on my father's side was, and so my grandfather on my mother's side was. And clearly, many of us are rooted in that, and we want to provide more social housing. I have not seen a good argument against the RLDP tonight. I think if you do argue against it, we leave us open to any developer to come along and saying, we want to develop that site and we don't have an RLDP to defend it. And we must have that to give us a legal basis to defend things which are outside our RLDP. And equally though, when it comes to planning, we can look at the viability assessment of those developments going forward. So we could say that we want a shop or we want community facilities, and let's bring that argument and that discussion to the planning committee when we get that opportunity to do so. Obviously, I won't go into detail because, as you know, I'm Vice Chair of Planning. But clearly, though, we do need to be thinking of this. The RLDP has gone through a long process, and I ask you all to support it.
Okay, we're getting close to time, so I'll go to Councillor John. Councillor Hodges, did you want to speak? And then we'll go back to Councillor Sivignan for her right to reply. So, Councillor John.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm not going to take your time up. I understand totally the demand for housing. I get questions every day of the week. But what concerns me, particularly about the Western Vale, and the leader has spoke about it tonight, and I know the leader has worked very hard with the Health Board, but the Health Board have got to provide health facilities in the Western Vale. Both the surgeries in Llawn Major serve St Athan, the wider west of the villages out to St Bride's, and quite simply, there is no way that you can build more and more and not have the health facility. Both surgeries in Llawn Major are clogged, uptight. They can't take more. And quite honestly, I know the leaders work very hard, as does the chief executive, but we're talking on deaf ears. And I think the Welsh Government has got to step in here and sort this health board out. The last time I met the chief executive, she told me she had 300 projects waiting to be done. And we know what they've done. They've pulled out of the Penarth one, which we allowed them in there 10 years ago to Penarth Leisure Centre. The health board are not working with the council. And the Welsh Government, it's all very well saying we've got to provide so many houses. We know what we've got to provide because we get so many people looking for houses. But they need to open up the space up on Llandough, where they could build a new village with 2,500, 3,000 houses. And they could have a direct access then down to the A48. Because quite honestly, the roads are clogged up all the way to Barry. Every morning, if I've got a meeting at 9 o'clock, I leave home at 7 o'clock, not to be jammed up in a traffic jam every morning. So quite simply, we've got to work this out. And quite simply, we got to start with the health and get the Welsh Government on board. Yes, we need houses, but it's no good. You've got to treat people properly. You've got to have the facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry, I'm guessing that's a legacy hand.
No, it's not. But just to go back onto Goodjohn, what he just said, I agree with a lot of what he said.
I'm really sorry. You've already spoken, Councillor Perry. Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Hodges now. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson has a second go.
So, no, that was a separate motion, same as you had the first before the motion. Yeah, you did. Okay, we're going to move on to Councillor Hodges. Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This, just to remind people, is about Barry. We've heard lots of mentions of rural Vale and also, for some reason, Penarth. Let's take the three sites. We've already voted on Waycock, and it's amazing how if a slightly different vote of opinion by a couple of councillors would have changed that. But Waycock is not going to be council housing. So let's dump that idea for starters. This will be a commercial venture. And we've already discussed the implications for the road network and everything like that. When it comes to the Bendricks, I've heard a number of councillors here, including cabinet members and people, going on about concerns about infrastructure, facilities. I'm sorry, I don't believe that facilities automatically follow the housing. We've seen plenty of examples of that, and that they will continue. We're still in a period of, well, what did the Tories call it? Yeah, they brought in, they screwed the economy. The economy is still screwed. The money is not there. And I'll finish briefly by mentioning the one we haven't mentioned, and that's on the waterfront there. That's simply there because that was proposed for years as a potential hotel. And it has been, I think, a failure of this council to promote Barry as a destination, and to say quite simply, across the road, they're adding a number of bedrooms to an existing hotel, and that'll do nicely, I think has been an abject failure, not only for tourism, but also for general visitor numbers to our town, which would help the general economy as well. So what are we left with? They'll probably build a block of flats there. How imaginative. When it comes to facilities in our town, they are lacking in many areas, but to actually go down to an isolated area like the Bendricks and further put in housing down there where people will have little or no choice to live if they're on a list, and to offer them no facilities, I think is a very retrograde step, not only for them, but general society and the future of our town. I can't support the revised LDP as it is. And as to Councillor Wilson saying, you've got to have a revised LDP, or we will get shafted by future developers. Well, guess what? They've shafted us for years and we've let them. Just think on that. 30 years I've been on this council and I've seen some awful decisions made about the future of this town and the Vale of Glamorgan, and I am not seeing people capable of standing up to big business and money and venture capitalists and speculators, and this has got to stop. We must all start growing some cojones. Thank you.
Councillor Tivignanum.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to repeat what I've said already, but if I can just take the Bendrix scheme, because it was brought up by Councillor Ernest earlier. The scheme, as Councillor Perks has mentioned, is a council housing development scheme delivering 70 affordable homes adjacent to the recently completed council scheme on Hazelwood Road. You know, and the Bendrix is an expanding community, and I think that, you know, this helps to sustain the existing bus services that have already been mentioned by the leader. The housing development team will also soon be holding a pre-application consultation with residents, and of course, elected members should participate in that. Was it last week? Thank you. So I hope everyone's taken part in that consultation. Excellent. So only the two of you did. So perhaps other councillors should have participated in that in order to make their views clear. Perhaps Councillor Ernest should have done that. But, you know, so that offered an opportunity for people to participate. And hopefully residents have participated in that. Look, the Vale is in a national growth area. We need housing. I'm not going to apologise for bringing this report to you today and asking for approval, because I want to see affordable homes in Barry, and this will deliver over 200 affordable homes in Barry. And you know, if we don't pass this, and if we don't have this housing growth as part of our these sites as part of our revised local development plan, we will be vulnerable to speculative applications, I'm afraid, and that is the truth, and they will be more difficult to resist. So I urge members to vote and approve this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll take this to a vote now, Amy. Councillor Ernest, we have finished the debate now.
Yes, Chairman, but Councillor Civignano mentioned my name just now. I'm not aware that I was consulted on the development, probably because I represent a different ward at the present time. Simply want to make that clear.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Did you want to come back in there, Councillor Civignano? No problem. Okay, we'll take this to a vote. Thank you, Amy. If you can get it ready. Okay, the vote is ready. Has everyone voted, Amy? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, I think she's having some problems with her. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, great. We can just stop the vote and display that. So with 26 for, 22 against and 1 abstention, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2025-26. Leader, can you take us through this? Sorry, Councillor Burnett. Let me know when you're ready.
Too busy watching the outcome. So yes, this is a reference from Cabinet on the 20th of November. It's the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report, something that we have regularly, if you have a look at the report, it has it goes through the economic update. That's the factors driving the UK economy under the period under review. Analysis of interest rate forecasts from December this month through till March 2028, Treasury management strategy for 2025-26 review, and there's no policy changes as of the 30th of September this year. The Council's capital expenditure and prudential indicators review, that's included at Appendix 1, and the investment portfolio as well lists the investments as of the 30th of September were just over, well, 51.775 million, up from 17.19 million in April of this year. The interest rate was an average rate of 4.22% between April and September, and that meant that there was about 1.19 million, including interest accrued. There was a borrowing strategy is included, looking at new external borrowing, and during the first 6 months that was 6 million at an average rate of about 4.56%. Due to high borrowing costs, the council are borrowing for shorter terms, up to 7 years. That means that we can re-borrow if the rates come down. The maturing Public Works Loans Board debt repaid during the first 6 months of this year total just under 6 million, and that was at an average rate of 4.47%. So there's further details in terms of the borrowing strategy, but as ever, we are prudent in terms of our borrowing, and we are also prudent in terms of our investments. In terms of debt rescheduling, the council hasn't considered any debt rescheduling opportunities so far this financial year because of the interest rates that are still in place. So, as I said, we have this twice a year, and I would imagine that we will have another one around the time of the budget we normally do. So this has been referred to us for consideration, and therefore I would move that we approve.
And I'll second that recommendation.
Thank you. See no dissent, so that report is approved. Moving on to agenda item 8E, review of the Vale of Glamorgan Council's petition scheme. Leader?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just bringing up the relevant papers, if I can find them. It's right, my folder's a bit back to front today. So this was a reference from Cabinet on the 20th of November. We brought in a new petition scheme back in, I think it was 2022, and we're looking to upgrade it. Basically, there is a duty that we are bound by, and that includes details around how a petition may be submitted to the council, how and by when the council will acknowledge receipt, the steps we might take in response to a petition, the circumstances in which we might take no action, and how and by when the council will make available its response to a petition. If you look at the original policy, the original report, the draft policy is included in the appendix, and that details, as I said, who can raise a petition, etc. So it's fairly straightforward, and this is brought to you for consideration, and I would move that we approve.
I'll second that recommendation.
Councillor Johnson?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few seconds for everybody to put their headsets on. So we heard earlier about the self-assessment and the need to be responsive to the public. It's important that we maintain a way for the public to raise issues with us as a council, and the type of an online petition that is now popular is one way of doing that, I'd say. Unfortunately, when you read the report, you see that like many legal messages online, it's quite long and quite difficult to follow for ordinary members of the public, shall we say. I know this is the nature of the type of exercise, but it's not helpful really to for people to use them. But more importantly is to ensure that people are aware of that this is the way of engaging with the council, as the experience is not a great one at this juncture. In preparing the reports, and as it appeared, only 3 valid petitions were received by the council in 3 years. One was about the RLDP, and led to a lot of complaints. And there was one about traffic issues in Cowbridge and one about the old harbour in Barry. Only one reached the threshold of 100 signatures through the council site alone. And an external site added a lot of signatures to it, so the council wasn't able to accept it. I understand that there is now another one available to do with car parking fees in Penarth, so maybe we can see a response to this in due course. So the challenge for the council, I guess, is to ensure that people use the tool for creating and promoting these petitions. So it is noted that in the meantime, outside of the formal online process, there was one actually that was successful, and it was to do with the school crossing provision and an application to use a CB radio, and that reached the former Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee and the Licensing Committee. And we had one about from Councillor Haynes as well. So we are still accepting petitions in the traditional way, but is this going to continue, or will they just be available online? And how are we going to promote this as a useful way of making contact with our citizens? Thank you.
Councillor Burnett, did you want to respond to that?
Are there any other speakers?
No, no one else has their hands up.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think the aim of this, I mean, apart from this being a statutory process, sorry, I'm going to cough now. I think it is something that we need to improve at, so that people know that if they make their voices heard through a petition, then it will be dealt with effectively. It was interesting that you noted that some had got as far as scrutiny committee, and I think that we need to work on what the structure is for them being considered, because quite often a petition will start, but it's only when it can actually be fully explored in light of whatever evidence is available that you can come to a reasonable outcome. So I think that the recommendation here that we note that a promotional exercise of the petition facility would be undertaken by the council's communication team might help that. And said if we have more, I don't know. I mean, this is a personal thing that sometimes I find it quite frustrating when you sort of say, well, there's a a petition of 10,000 signatures, and you know that actually when that is looked at formally, there's only about sort of 2,000 on there that are from people in the Vale. So we have to find a way of engaging more effectively in whatever format our residents feel is most appropriate to them. If you've got any further ideas on how we can improve that, I think I would be very, very keen to hear. And also maybe it's something that you could take through the Democratic committee as well in the future. But I think this is a move forward, and hopefully, if we've got something, if you want to get your views known by the council, use the e-petition. It will be hopefully quite easy. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Johnson? Yep. So I see no dissent then, so that report is approved. We'll quickly move on to urgent decision procedure, and then we'll have a short comfort break. For us on this side of the chamber, I'm aware there's a lot of noise of water. It's not a leak, apparently it's internal gutters, so not to panic. I thought it was going to pour in on us for a second, but I'm told it's fine. So we'll move on to agenda item 9, to inform the council of the use of the urgent decision procedure under Article 15(14) of the Constitution. We'll take both of these together if that's okay. So the RLDP report and the petition scheme. Okay, that decision procedure is noted. So we'll take a comfort break. We'll come back in about 10 minutes, so about 12 minutes past 8. Thank you. I'll give everyone a 1 minute warning if that's okay. Okay, everyone. Are we ready? Thank you, James. Fabulous. So moving on to agenda item 10, which is a motion submitted by Councillor Burnett and Councillor Goodjohn. White Ribbon Day, gender-based violence. Councillor Burnett, would you like to present your motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The harm caused to victims and society in general by violence against women and girls in all its forms, but not limited to harassment, stalking, rape, sexual assault, murder, honour-based abuse and coercive control is immeasurable. While men and boys also suffer from many of these forms of abuse, they disproportionately affect women and girls. Just to give you a couple of examples, a woman is killed by a man every 3 days in the UK. Violence against women and girls makes up just under 20% of all recorded crime in England and Wales. And in the year to March 2023, police recorded 103,135 rape and serious sexual offences. I was saddened to learn that our White Ribbon accreditation had lapsed and feel it's important that it's renewed as a matter of urgency. I mean, there's all sorts of terminology these days that's new, and it's really worrying, isn't it? The manosphere we hear about. In academic literature, we can read about it. A collection of online forums, websites, blogs promoting misogyny and opposition to feminism. It includes communities such as incels and men's rights movements associated with online harassment, intimidation, and gaslighting. As community leaders and decision makers, we must, by our individual actions and the policies we implement, prioritise preventing violence against women and girls and help to create a more equal society where all individuals, regardless of gender, can live freely without fear. I hope that tonight this will be a unanimous yes vote, and to that effect, I ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Councillor Goodjohn, Ewan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm proud to second this motion because violence against women and girls is overwhelmingly committed by men, and young men are a significant portion of that. It is important that we raise awareness as far as we possibly can across the county to call out any kind of discrimination, violence or threats against women and girls, against everyone, but women and girls are the significant, overwhelming target of these threats. My friends I know have been affected by this significantly, and it has become an epidemic online to make threats against feminism, against women, and against the idea of women living freely in this society. And consistently we see attacks against particularly elected women in the political sphere ramping up day after day. We must call it out, and I'm proud to say that it must start with men and it must end with men. I hope that today will be a moment of reflection for everyone, and I hope that this raises awareness amongst councillors and members of the public to join us on the vigils that occur every year on the 25th of November, and to sign the White Ribbon Pledge, to never excuse, to always call out any of these threats made in public, by your friends, by your family, and to protect women and girls across the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say I welcome and support this motion. We are aware of the fact that not many people will often report domestic abuse or gender violence until it gets to the point where there is absolutely no other choice. When it comes to domestic abuse, there is often a degree of brainwashing involved where the victim will believe the perpetrator when they say, no one will believe you when you tell them I've done this. It does happen. Previously, I was chair of Homes and Safe Communities, and I think we had a presentation at some point on domestic abuse, and I would welcome further presentation or engagement with members and Vale Domestic Abuse Services if it would come to live well. Earlier today, the Mayor talked about the exhibition in Arts Central in Barry. I'm pleased that Plaid Cymru leader Rhena Piorwyth was also able to visit the exhibition one in Barry last week, and that our candidate Sarah Rhoose was able to attend the recent vigil referred to earlier. It is important that there is sustainable funding for these services, with a long-term funding model for specialist services and moving away from short-term competitive grants that create administrative burdens and hinder staff retention. This is especially vital for smaller by and for organisations serving minority, ethnic, disabled, LGBTQ+, and migrant women. I hope this is considered as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
With one of my other hats on, I'm a magistrate, so I spent today listening to domestic violence cases, because on Mondays and Tuesdays, Cardiff Magistrates Courts always runs domestic violence cases so that they can have specialists there to assist people, which is depressing, isn't it, that every week they spend 2 days and allocate courts to listen to these problems. So every week, a woman is murdered by her abuser. In the 3 years up to March 22, 249 domestic homicide victims. The suspect was male in 241 cases, and 75% of them were a male partner or ex-partner. When men are domestic homicide victims, in 2/3 of cases, they're killed by a member of their own family who is a male. So on average, 1.2 women are killed every week. This is shocking enough. But these women leave behind children, parents, siblings, friends. The ripples continue out into our communities and wider society, and the effects are felt for years. For those who put forward the "what about men" argument, and we've all heard it, women are more likely to experience higher levels of fear, more likely to experience coercive and controlling behaviour, which leaves them unable to escape their situation, and are more likely to be seriously hurt and killed than men. Margaret Atwood, author of The Handmaid's Tale, said, "Men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Women are afraid that men will kill them." Domestic abuse includes coercive control, which is intimidation, degradation, isolation, the threat of physical and sexual violence, psychological and emotional abuse, physical or sexual abuse, financial or economic abuse, harassment and stalking, online or digital abuse. Domestic violence and abuse are part of the sexism and misogyny that are deeply rooted in most societies, including ours, which leads to the unequal treatment of women, their status as lesser beings, and to them being widely disbelieved when domestic abuse is reported. Only 18% of women suffering domestic abuse reported to the police. On average, victims have been abused or attacked 50 times before getting effective help. National data shows the average length of the abuse experienced is 6 years. Another survey of victims showed that the length of abuse ranged from a few months to 65 years. There are over 1 million calls to the police in England and Wales every year about domestic abuse, every 30 seconds. Children are both primary and secondary victims of domestic abuse. They may be targets, but more commonly they witness this behaviour, and it is highly damaging. Living with domestic violence is an ACE, an adverse childhood experience, along with death, divorce, and other sad circumstances. This can lead to aggression and challenging behaviour, depression and anxiety, difficulties making friends and trusting others, poor family relationships, and suicidal ideation. Boys who grow up with domestic abuse are more likely to become abusers themselves, and girls are more likely to enter abusive relationships, often repeatedly, because these children have no example of a normal family relationship as a pattern for their own lives. From a purely local government point of view, the effects on our services are huge. Domestic abuse victims and their families will be known to social services. Help and support will be needed for years. In housing, victims and their families will need help leaving their situation. They may need to be housed in a hostel or found emergency or alternative accommodation at short notice, often far from their abusers. Schools will take on children who are traumatised by their experiences, who may act out in school because it is a safe space. They may need new schools and will need help catching up on lost education. This doesn't take into account the time and resources that other risk services, such as the NHS and the police force, must devote to this. It is incumbent on all councillors to be aware of the services that local government, and in particular our council, can provide in these situations, so that we can signpost our residents and constituents to our services and organisations where help is available. I hope I have shown you how important this support for girls and women is, so that it becomes unacceptable for anyone to commit this abuse, to suffer this abuse, or to allow it to happen without challenge. Even though new laws have been passed against coercive control and against intentional strangulation, these are bright spots in the overwhelmingly dark picture of girls and women suffering from domestic violence. I urge you to support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Godfrey, are you there?
No audio, Chair.
We can't hear you. There's no audio, Councillor Godfrey. Would you like to go out, come back in and try again? I'll keep you on the list. Councillor Godfrey, do you want to shut down your computer, start again, and then we'll come back to you if that's okay? Councillor Birch, you want to turn yours off? Thank you. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thank you, Mayor. I strongly support this motion. Violence against women and domestic abuse is in most committed by men in the highest proportion. But I would ask this council to acknowledge the nuanced and diverse ways in which abuse can present in LGBTQ+ relationships. There is a significant issue with barriers to reporting of abuse in LGBTQ+ community, and the prevalence of domestic abuse is likely to be higher than statistics indicate. Abuse in same-sex relationships can include identity-based coercion, for example, threats to out someone, emotional and psychological abuse, and control related to sexuality or gender identity, forms that are often invisible or minimised in mainstream discourse. I'm speaking of this to represent a woman survivor from my ward. In their own words, control can look very different in same-sex relationships, subtler, less recognised and often unseen. Abuse doesn't fit the expected narrative and is easily minimalised, making it harder to seek help. Abuse in Abuse in same-sex relationship also goes unseen or dismissed, but it is real. No one should suffer in silence. We are seen, we are believed, and we are not alone. I'd like to also take this opportunity to recommend people to visit the powerful White Ribbon Survivors Art exhibition, which is displayed now in Art Central. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Councillor Cowp?
Thank you. I'll try not to repeat anything that's been said. We know that violence against women and girls remains one of the most pervasive human rights violations of our times. And despite meaningful progress in some areas, barriers remain. Women continue to face persistent pay and employment gaps, a heightened risk of poverty, particularly single mothers, and entrenched occupational segregation, with women concentrated in lower paid roles. While Wales-specific data can be difficult to isolate, current estimates indicate that about 11% of women experience domestic abuse each year and 3.2% experience sexual violence. Over 32,000 incidents were reported to South Wales Police during 22-23. We also know that approximately half of all violence occurs against women in the home. And as has been said, children witness that if they're there. Although politically Wales has taken steps forward, for example, we have a female First Minister, and we maintain one of the highest proportions of women in UK legislative body, with 43% of members of the Senate being women, gaps still remain. And I want to urge this council, we fully support this motion, but we must prioritise the promotion of women's independence and decision-making power, not only in public life, but within relationships and communities. And this includes supporting women's access to resources, leadership roles, and real influence in our workplaces, our democratic institutions, and our society. As I said, we fully support the intention behind this motion. I just want to make a couple of suggestions that when these resolutions are implemented, the Vale Council could bear in mind. Evidence suggests that education based on gender-based violence requires different approaches for males and females to address their unique experiences and the societal factors that influence them. Embracing this research that tailored education is needed to challenge specific gender norms, address different risk factors and experiences, and prevent violence more effectively, we feel could strengthen two of the resolutions put forward. So, for example, when implemented, the resolution regarding staff training could be targeted towards the staff groups most likely to function as first points of contact, and this will help to ensure that training is meaningful and operationally effective and enable those staff to make the necessary referrals in order to support women and girls. And secondly, the recommendation on education includes partnership working, should include partnership working with external agencies, particularly schools and the police, and with charities. Promoting and empowering women's independence should also form a core component of the educational approach. And we believe that emphasis would strengthen the motion, and we would welcome further discussion on the most appropriate way forward to implement any suggestions that you feel we've made that could help to strengthen the motion and its recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burnett, can I come back to you on that before we move on to other people who are willing to speak?
No, I'm making a note, Mayor, so I can come in on
no
all
problem.
these.
Councillor Godfrey, are you with us now?
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can, that's great. Off you go.
Yeah, wonderful. Whilst I agree with the proposition in principle, I do take umbrage about the fact that this is all about women. I would argue this should encapsulate all members of society, and I would also argue that maybe the stats are there for the women because a woman may be more averse to putting a complaint in, where a male would be more embarrassed to do it. So they're reluctant to make a complaint. So the stats don't mirror the same thing. So I think this proposal going forward ought to mirror all members of society and not just women. Thank you.
Can we, I'm really sorry, this far too loud in the chamber. Let's let everyone have their own opinions. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak.
No, but I'm not calling you now. I'm asking, is that a point of order?
No, it was a question. I was going to come in and speak.
Okay, no problem. I'll put you, we've got quite a long list of people who want to speak, if that's okay. Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight two issues around children and domestic violence and homelessness and domestic violence. So children in Wales who experience domestic violence, whether directly or by witnessing it, can often suffer deep emotional and psychological harm, including anxiety, depression and trauma. It can affect their behaviour, their schooling, their friendships and their development. And many experience sleep problems, fear and low self-esteem. Welsh law recognising these children as victims in their own right and safeguarding duties under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act Wales Act ensure that support is offered from schools, local authorities and specialist services. With the right help, such as Live Fear Free, children support workers and early interventions, children can recover and rebuild safety and stability in their lives. I just want to say that there's a recognised link in Wales with domestic violence and homelessness. And as somebody who works with perpetrators and victims and children of those families, I recognise these more than you would believe. So 40% of homeless women cite domestic violence as one of the causes of their homelessness. So one of the issues around that is their inability to move on because there is a lack of affordable housing and social housing for them to move into, just taking you back to the previous motion. Many survivors of domestic violence do not show in the statistics as they are women and they stay with family or they sofa surf, but they will still need a home and they will need a long-term solution, and that is a home and a house or somewhere to live and not a short-term fix. So I just want to say that, please understand, this is a long-term issue. So thank you.
Councillor John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was, quite honestly, I'm absolutely appalled what I hear and read every day. And I fully support this motion and what everybody has said tonight, particularly Councillor Birch with her report. It's frightening to read this every day of the week. Some woman is really hurt, murdered, strangled. I just dread to think to pick up a newspaper and just read this. I feel that when they go to court, there should be stronger sentences. It's not a bit of good just giving them 18 months to go back and do it all again. And quite honestly, you'll get my full support in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Violence against women and girls is regrettably a serious and major problem within our society, and for a variety of factors, the risks posed are getting worse. And so for this reason, I will be supporting the motion before the Council this evening, and I do hope that it is supported unanimously. But I would also echo the comments made by the leader about actions as well as words. I've always attempted throughout my time on this council to ensure that my actions can help deliver the outcomes that I wish to see. That was why on the 15th of January this year at the former Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Wood and I put forward a recommendation requesting a review of the Council's corporate safeguarding policy following the appalling incidents and reports we've seen of grooming gangs across this country, which are absolutely disgraceful. And rightly, we need to learn the lessons from what happened in other places, and we need to make sure that processes are put in place to ensure that what went on, and I'm sorry to say, in all probability, still goes on, doesn't happen, and that we stamp it out, because it was absolutely appalling. And so it was with regret that that recommendation was voted down by the committee. I think, if I recall correctly, one member who voted against that recommendation made reference to a political bandwagon, which I didn't think was helpful at the time, because ultimately we have to be free and willing and feel able to discuss topics that at times can be difficult, can be controversial, and can be sensitive. Because that scandal happened ultimately, Madam Mayor, because people felt afraid, in many cases, to speak out. They feared that they would be accused of racism or discrimination or being bigoted. And the consequence was that women and girls suffered absolutely appalling abuse. And so we do need to change our culture so that if people do feel that there are risks being posed, that they feel comfortable and confident to speak out against them. And so I would hope that this authority will take steps to ensure that that is indeed the case. I think if we look at some of the risks posed to women and girls, sex crimes, violence, it is of huge concern that illegal migration contributes to this problem. I hear people shouting from sedentary positions, but with respect, I would say that we do need to speak frankly and honestly about these issues. And we need to accept that where there are problems posed, we take steps to tackle them. I look at data published by the Centre for Migration Control, which was calculated using freedom of information responses from the Ministry of Justice, which states that Afghans and Eritreans are up to 20 times more likely to commit a sex crime than British nationals. Now, given that people from these groups make up a significant proportion of those currently arriving into this country illegally, we need to recognise that this does pose risks to women and girls, illegal migration, and we need to unite in our efforts to stop it. And so, to conclude, Madam Mayor, I shall be supporting this motion this evening. It is the right thing to do, but I do hope that our actions match our words in this regard, and that this authority can unite in dealing with all of the threats posed and act accordingly. And I hope to see that reflected in our policy positions. Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Yeah, and I'm very sorry that the people coming from Afghanistan have been mentioned in this motion today. I think it's inappropriate. And of course, there's the age demographic where younger men tend to be more likely to commit such an offence. And of course, people coming over by boat tend to be of that younger demographic, and that is never mentioned. I did see the hand of another member up earlier, and I knew what was going to come. We can predict it. Going back a few years now, time flies, there was the Black Lives Matter campaign, and that was countered by the All Lives Matter campaign. And let us not forget that no life matters until Black Lives Matter. And there's been so much discrimination over the decades over the centuries, and it has to stop. And hopefully the young generation that's in school now might be that generation, and it might just be in this country or hopefully globally. 1960s United States and the segregation on the buses. We've come a long way in a very little time, but let's not forget this country hasn't exactly covered itself in glory on that issue either. Looking at the motion, I do just have a couple of little concerns that with what is written. It says strengthening of training so staff can identify and respond to abuse and coercive control. Now, that could have been explained, because I've just got a slight question mark on exactly what that means, and perhaps that can be explained to us at the end. And also where it says adopt a zero tolerance approach to gender-based violence across public spaces. Now, I would hope that the police in South Wales and the whole UK have a zero tolerance approach to any kind of violence in public spaces. Now, perhaps that is just misworded and I've misinterpreted what that actually says in the motion. But if we can have a little bit more explanation on that at the end as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back at the end if that's okay. Just to say, we are at time. Are people okay to continue for 15 more minutes? Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to fact check the Centre for Migration Control. So it's a think tank. So I just wanted to say there is still no recordable data for any crime statistics to do with anybody, any immigrants to the UK. I said that last time when the motion was brought forward, and I will fact check that again, please.
Okay.
So a point of order, thank you.
Can that be added to the minutes? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Payne, that's noted. We've got 4 more speakers. If we can try and keep it shorter, that would be great. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as you know, the Vale of Glamorgan sort of commissions Vale Domestic Abuse Services to actually sort of support people fleeing domestic violence or people who are experiencing domestic violence and considering actually leaving. If we also have the Safer Vale comes under my portfolio, which produces a monthly statistics on various different crimes that happen within the Vale. Now, one of those that they sort of produces information on the Dark Project, which is where domestic violence has happened in a home where children might be involved. It records how many children might have been there. So if I just give you a flavour of some of the different things that come up with within the Safer Vale, and then something about the Vale Domestic Abuse Services and what they do. So in March 25, there was 39 children involved in or in the home where domestic violence had taken place. So if we think about 39 different children, if they're at school age, going to school and trying to learn on the day after that they've been sat in a home where they've experienced domestic violence, the support that's needed from staff and other specialists is quite high. And just talking about children, one of the other things that I'm going to say the Office for National Statistics has found is that young people who are 16 to 24 have the highest percentage of victims of violence and controlling behaviour. That's 49% of that sort of age group experience violence and domestic abuse. Also, you know, if you think about the acts that the Welsh Government have brought in that have sort of helped and given safe spaces for women, and it's generally women and girls who do experience domestic violence. And I would suggest other councillors look at the Office of National Statistics who produce reports on this sort of thing. You'll see that the level of domestic violence that women and girls experience in comparison to men is you know, more than double of that. But yes, men do experience it as well, and we do need to support everybody who's a victim of domestic violence. One of the things that Vale Domestic Abuse Services do that we've commissioned is it focuses on creating lasting change and ensuring that domestic abuse and sexual violence are not tolerated in our community. That there's specialist support, as you would expect, that's tailored for survivors preparing to leave sort of that, and then when they're in the crisis point, or if they need emergency accommodation for women and children, and then counselling and outreach programmes as well. One of the other things that has been done, which is also important though, is we also need to work with the perpetrators as well, because we need to break that chain, and that's some of the programmes that are also involved. And I know there was a drive project that is aimed at the person who's on the a higher level of domestic violence, if you like, that they're seeking to change their behaviour and how they interact in relationships and stuff like that. And that is really important as well. So yeah, there's a financial cost to all this. If we think about the number of women who are suffering domestic violence, who are wanting to flee, who are needing a home to live in, the cost to them personally, but also the cost to society as a whole is massive. And also I'd want to say is that, we had the White Ribbon event, and Jane was talking about that she was one of the first ones who'd, with another group of women, who'd opened up the first refuge in Cardiff, and that was 40 years ago. Did you say 40? And that we're still at the stage now where we're still needing to address this situation. Obviously, we've got a lot better and people feel more free to actually be able to talk about what's happening to them. But we've also got programmes that we can all be sort of part of. If you think about the Ask and Act project, and then I think the local like pubs and stuff like that, there's Ask for Angela, project as well. So where this, if somebody comes into a place and asks for Angela at a bar, they're actually asking for support and help because they're trying to flee somebody at that time. But the Ask and Act is also, something that as councillors we could all sort of undertake training to do. I know that there was a time when they did provide the training within the Vale, and that's just been having your ears open and active listening to people and what they're saying and perhaps not what they're not saying. And I'm not saying that you go around sort of trying to counsel people, but they're able to actually pinpoint where they might be able to go if they are suffering domestic violence and who they can contact. So that's all I wanted to say really, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Hennessy?
I'm wholeheartedly supporting this motion by Councillor Burnett and Councillor Goodjohn. I'm not going to go on about everything else what everyone has already said, because I agree with everything what everyone has said. I recommend that everyone supports this, and like Councillor Burnett, I request a recorded vote.
Councillor Aviat.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all your support in the chamber. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I've been a little bit triggered by Councillor Godfrey's comments about complaining. 10 years domestic abuse survivor, and you only complain once, Councillor Godfrey, and that's when you run away in the middle of the night with your children and there's no going back. That's the only time you can complain. If you look at it as a hostage situation, no access to phones, no access to family, friends, anybody, you're monitored 24/7. And when you see that door open and you've got your, you run away with whatever you've got on, grab your children, run away, you complain once, and then once you complain, you get away, there's no going back because you'll be dead. And when you do leave, you're the most vulnerable. Most people get killed after they've left. Thank you all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for such a personal contribution. I think the whole chamber is in support of you there. Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't intended to speak on this, but I fully and wholeheartedly support this motion. I would, however, like to draw members' attention to the fact that none of this happens in a vacuum. None of this happens without a societal perception of the way things are. We've heard today about the amount of abuse and threats and other things happening online, particularly with elected females mostly, but it does happen to others, and it certainly happens across gender boundaries and so on. But in the Live Well Task and Finish group, looking at young people in sport, or looking at people and access to sport and why people aren't doing it. One of the things that came up was the way that young women are being treated by their school friends, and the kind of misogynistic attitudes that are at play even at young levels, even at primary school levels, where girls are being undermined and debased by the boys in their classes who are rating them on their appearance, on their and whatever, and as well as their sporting abilities or their effectiveness in a game, and they tend to drop out. This isolation of very young women at such an early stage. I believe contributes to the later attitudes and the kind of misogyny that we do see coming online, where it's not being challenged. It's not being challenged effectively when it takes place in sporting environments, and it's certainly not happening. It's not being challenged by I believe by the teachers and so on. And I think that this needs to be addressed, but that's an add-on really to the motion. But I would urge every member to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Prothero, did you want to speak? Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Prothero.
Thank you, Mayor. Many people have already spoken on this and have said what I would have wanted to have said. So I really just want to stress the point of how normal, can I say, this behaviour is, especially with our young people, and how everybody, all of us, regardless of our demographics, whether we live in deprived areas, our friends, our families, we know people who this has happened to. So this is a terribly important topic that we need to find a way of, as many people have said, breaking the cycle, teaching our sons and our boys through schooling and relationships of that this isn't normal behaviour and it's not acceptable, and our girls not to accept it. So very important. It's everyday life in Britain today, regardless of culture, creed. We need to do something about it and support this motion and the Vale of Glamorgan go forward. Thank you.
Councillor Sivanyanam.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, because I don't want to repeat what's already been said. I wholeheartedly support this motion. Ending violence against women and girls isn't an optional extra in society. If we want to create a fair, equal and safe society, then we need to be thinking about this. We need to be concentrating on this. And I think this motion actually captures the issues that we need to look at. We need to look at prevention. We need to look at supporting survivors. And we need to look at working in partnership with the rest of society to ensure that women and girls are safe. And as a mother of 3 girls, I can tell you it's prevalent, it's a human rights violation, and we should be proud that this motion has been brought here today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, nearly all. Thank you specifically to Llawn as our youth champion. You were outside in the freezing cold for the vigil, and actually is a shining example to our young people in the Vale. Always very active in this field. Thank you to those, to Councillor Collins, to Councillor Emma Goodjohn, Councillor Cowp, for your input, and I'll come on to those a bit later if I can. Councillor Godfrey, I would like to clarify, please. I said the second paragraph of what I said was, while men and boys also suffer from many of these forms of abuse, they disproportionately affect women and girls. That's why we're here tonight. That's why we're discussing this tonight. Thank you, Councillor Hennessy, for your support, and as ever, Helen, for your informed comment. Thank you, Councillor Carroll, for an opportunity to say, actually, it's not about that. We don't need to use a very serious motion to start demonising people. So I won't go further into that. Councillor Perry, you quoted things I don't believe are on my original motion. So if you could email me that, and we will make sure it's fully considered. Councillor Perks, I know how involved you are in this, and I have an idea on that. And thank you, Councillor Aviat, for your personal thoughts. It's a shame, actually, because I was going to recount an example from a family member, but because of some of the abuse and intimidation I receive from local bloggers, I don't really want my family to be upset by seeing our personal details online tomorrow morning. And I think that's part of it as well, is that the intimidation, the coercive control that builds. And sometimes it's all right, it's only a joke, isn't it? Wasn't really meant. Are you being pathetic, reacting to it? It's quite amazing, really, the amount of times that happens. What I would like to suggest today, and I will send an invitation out, is that this has been so well supported. I know that our officers are really keen to take this forward and to make the readoption of a white ribbon a worthwhile and valuable initiative. So I would like to convene a roundtable as big as we want it to be, to make sure that we capture everyone's views who wants to contribute around this. And if this motion is passed tonight, that will be one of my next steps. So thank you for your contributions tonight. They're all written down and they are mostly all valued. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry, unless it's a point of order, we were summing up then, so I'm not going to bring you in if that's okay.
But it's clarification that what I queried is actually on the agenda of tonight's meeting, just so that Councillor Burnett's aware of that.
If you can email Councillor Burnett, as you mentioned, that would be great.
If you just read the website, the Vale of Glamorgan website, what I read out is actually there on the agenda.
We'll clear that up with you. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's actually on the motion, not on the agenda.
Okay, it is on the motion. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll take this to a vote. Amy, let me know when you're ready. Okay, the vote started. Councillor Godfrey, I think at the moment you haven't voted. Councillor Ernest. Is there anyone else? Okay, we think they may have disconnected. Okay, thank you, Amy. If you can show the vote. It's a unanimous vote, 46-4. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 14. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 14, member questions. Sorry, agenda item 11, not 14. We have 14 member questions. Question 1, regarding the former Wilco's building on Holton Road, sorry. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Bringing the 22,323 square foot building back into use is the first part of an ambitious plan to breathe new life into the town centre. Our aim is to find a way to develop this prime retail space into a vibrant space for small businesses, and including other activities that will drive footfall into the town centre. In the short term, and as members will no doubt have seen, the building's windows will feature seasonal art displays to attract shoppers in Brighton Holton Road, while work is carried out to make the store ready for occupation. This work has already begun following the exchange of contracts with the vendor, and we are so eager to make progress. We've ensured that we can have access to the building to undertake this work in advance of completion. And I think that's worth saying, that we are working under licence. So people have said, why can't we get in there? We want you in there as soon as we possibly can. But at the moment, we have purely exchanged contracts. The long-term plan for the site will be developed in partnership with local businesses and the wider community. This will be a lengthier process, and so in the meantime, from early 2026, the council will use the building to support local businesses by hosting activities designed to attract people into the town centre. And I've been amazed at the number of people who've come up with ideas already, so we'll obviously build those in for consideration. Work's required to ensure the building can be reopened, but as soon as possible we'll use the space to host events and exhibitions that attract people to the town centre. We'd love to hear residents' ideas for these activities. In the longer term, we aim to create something that adds real value to Holton Road. There are excellent examples elsewhere in Wales where the right scheme has transformed a town centre. And we want to work with local businesses and the people of Barry to design something that achieves the same impact. Might be similar, but it won't be identical because it has to be Barry, doesn't it? This is the most significant investment in the town centre for many years, and it's important that we get it right. For this reason, we'll involve as many people and businesses who share our belief as possible. This investment is about supporting Barry's High Street, its retailers, and giving more people a reason to visit the town. The acquisition, with support from Welsh Government, forms part of the Council's wider strategy to support town centres across the Vale of Glamorgan. This will ensure they remain vibrant, welcoming and sustainable places for people to live, work and visit. Thank you.
Councillor Goodjohn, do you have a supplementary? Go for it.
Thank you, Mayor. How will the council's use of the site link in with the Barry placemaking plan and ensure the revitalisation of the town centre?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. Is that, I mean, it's the placemaking. There's also the plan for neighbourhoods work that's going on as well. And I know that in the last meeting there were a lot of ideas for things that could happen. But also, as you'd be aware, my portfolio is to do with finances, that sort of thing. But the Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places will be taking over the work on this to make sure that it fully links in and it also fits in, with the Barry Place plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. Holiday Inn Express from Councillor Carroll to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Carroll. I would refer Councillor Carroll to the information provided on the FAQs on our website. I've referred him to this in the past. For completeness, we have worked closely with the MOD on the use of St Athan and East Camp under this scheme. The interest in the Holiday Inn Express was brought to our attention by letter dated the 16th of April to Chief Executive, as you're aware. Subsequent to receipt of that letter, the Chief Executive responded and a meeting was held to discuss further the MOD's position. When it became clear that the hotel would be brought into use, we engaged with a view of offering support and very proud to do so. Since then, and as you can imagine, our officers have been working hard to ensure that guests have access to the support they need and are given a warm welcome. I would ask Councillor Carroll in joining me to congratulate them for their hard work and dedication.
Councillor Carroll, yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. A recent Sky News investigation into the Afghan resettlement programme made some very serious allegations regarding the scheme. What discussions has the Council had with the Ministry of Defence regarding these allegations and their potential implications in the Vale of Glamorgan?
We work closely with all agencies, and if there were any concerns being brought up, we would deal with them. But I'm not aware. What I am aware of is that the Holiday Inn Express scheme is proving to be very successful, and as I'm sure that you could be told by your own group members, it's a very, very successful scheme.
Question 3, regarding car parking charges, from Councillor William to Councillor Wilson, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Thank you very much, Councillor William, for your question. As a starting point, it's always sad to see a business close its doors, especially when a business has a long and established history in the town. This is clearly the case here. Clearly, many factors can influence that decision, and this can include escalating costs of supplies and energy, staffing costs, a changing customer base, as well as a whole host of other factors, including personal factors. Whilst other factors such as availability of car parking, the cost of that car parking can be a factor, I do not think it is that straightforward without the benefit of full assessment of the situation. I would like to wish all those connected with this popular family business all the very best in their future endeavours and thank them for their contributions to this part of Barry. You already had the benefit of my statement on this matter at the start of the meeting, and you will have seen recent announcements regarding the same on social media and the press. For completeness, a report will be considered by Cabinet on Thursday the 4th of December that considers the current position in relation to car park charges at Penarth Cliff Walk, Coldnap and Bonamore, and takes into account the fact that charges were introduced at a challenging time of year for businesses with shorter daylight hours, changeable weather, and a decline in trade due to decreasing visitor numbers following the end of the school summer holidays. The report recommends a temporary suspension of charges until a further report is brought back to Cabinet to consider the need or otherwise for a flexible approach to the changing charging regime, which will no doubt consider seasonality. People and I, include members of all political persuasions in this, are always ready to criticise the Council for not listening or taking views into account. This is one example where we have listened, where we have reflected, and where we have conceded that we didn't get this quite right. So it's not only right that we press pause and reflect. We're able to do this before Christmas, so there is certainty for residents and businesses. We also know that Christmas period is for many a family occasion, and we want people to have some exercise and enjoy the local services that we have in Penarth and Barry. I know there will members who will say, we told you so, but rather than score political points, I would ask that members acknowledge the stance we have taken and support it.
Councillor William? We can't hear you, Councillor William. Do you want to try your mute button? Would you like to, if you want to, do you want to shut down, come back in? Hello? Yeah, don't worry, shut your computer down, come back and we'll come back to you with your supplementary if you'd like.
I'll put it in writing.
Or can you put it in writing? We'll come back to you, okay? We'll keep going through member questions, we'll come back to you. Thank you. Question 4. Community integration from Councillor Goodjohn to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn, and thank you, Mayor. Yes, it was a lovely day, wasn't it? It was a super day. The council is commissioned by the Ministry of Defence to provide support and welfare services to all arriving guests. The families will have received UK cultural awareness briefings prior to arrival to speed up their progression to settled accommodation, jobs, and being able to contribute to their new communities. Further induction briefings are given after arrival, which ensures they understand life in Wales, including Welsh and UK laws and customs. The Vale support team assists the families with immediate essential tasks such as setting up universal credit, national insurance numbers, registering with GPs, opening bank accounts, etc. Over the first few weeks, this is followed with regular meetings with the families as groups and individuals, offering lessons on cultural awareness, cost of living, public transport, etc. And the support team, including translators, also accompany guests on their first trips to a variety of service providers and health appointments, and help them get used to buses. So, education colleagues also attend the site, so children are enrolled in and attend local schools, and all adults receive English lessons every weekday whilst at the hotel. There are weekly group meetings where sessions centre around all aspects of life in the UK. The Holiday Inn Express provided interim accommodation for the entitled persons, that are the Afghans, we support. And at the outset, settled accommodation searches and move-on options are discussed, as well as an opportunity for the family to raise any questions they may have. And quite a number have already moved on to accommodation across the UK. We've had an exceptional response and support from the Rhoose community, a bit like happened in St Athan previously. And the local church arranging donations of clothing, toys and uniform, arranged coffee mornings and activities for the families. And it's absolutely brilliant to see the children so proud of their new school uniforms. The support team have also arranged and coordinated a number of local activities and events over the last few weeks. And the support team have taken families to Porthkerry, if the weather's okay, to play football, take children to the airport, arrange a week of activities so family can learn about UK traditions such as Halloween, I believe that was a joy, and Christmas. A local choir is due to visit, hopefully looking to recruit some new members. Barry Library visits for rhyme and sign sessions with the younger children. A weekly fan, which Friends and Neighbours group, is held at the hotel for the women, and the community police team have visited and held group sessions covering topics such as hate crime, domestic abuse, etc. We've recently appointed a nationwide private rent procurement officer. This role will solely concentrate on assisting the families to find and secure settled accommodation in the form of private rental accommodation in the areas of the family's choosing. Our main aim is to ensure that we provide as far as possible the best experience we can for our guests, for as long as they're with us, and to provide the foundations for successful integration into the communities that they will eventually settle into. Thank you.
Councillor Goodjohn, no? Councillor William, do you want to try again?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, that's brilliant. Off you go with your supplementary.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mayor. Does the translation facility work online?
I believe it should do. Off you go.
Okay, well, can we have a go?
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Even though I welcome a complete change of direction, but I was asking to hold back on the parking charges. This is too late for a lot of businesses, and we should have listened to our businesses when we warned you. But my question is, there's two parts to it. First of all, considering that a lot of other businesses are affected by these parking charges, the people who supply these cafes, the butchers, the fishmongers, and other types of providers for businesses, what process and evidence will you be using to reconsider these parking charges? And also, considering that you said that the council would give a new face to the Bromore car parking before raising the parking fees, can we have a definite say when the work will be done to improve it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor William. My understanding is, obviously, processes will be involved in determining car park charges. Obviously, you refer to lots of businesses which are not on the seaside. We've got no intention to introduce any car park charges in our town centres. That's the first point. Second point, you talked about Bromore. Now, obviously, Bromore is also subject to a new. If we at the moment we've got a road surface for Bromore. If we spent a considerable much more money on it, it would cause real issues for our budgets, and it's a serious issue because, as we know, we need to put in SABs, which basically is underground drainage at the car park there for the whole of it. So therefore, we put the amount we can put in so far. A lot of my decisions in council are also down to budgetary reasons, as well as obviously making sure that we have sufficient throughput of people and that we, the visitors, will hopefully pay as well. And that's very important. So we get a good churn of people, which is why we're considering seasonality. But nevertheless, I will have a look at that again with my officers about Bromore, but that's the advice I've been given so far.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Question 5, a strategic equality plan update from Councillor Carroll to Councillor Sifignan.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll, for your question. Given Councillor Carroll's recent and keen interest and concerns with equalities and diversity in the Vale of Glamorgan, I am a bit surprised by his question, given that an annual update on the delivery of the Council's Strategic Equality Plan is obviously given on a yearly basis. And I most recently brought the annual monitoring report to Cabinet in September, and it also went to the Live Well Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of November. So I would refer him to the report. It was quite detailed.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Across the country, many public sector training and grant funding opportunities have come to light that are open only to people from ethnic minority backgrounds. Will the Cabinet member please provide assurances that the authority operates no such schemes, particularly in light of Strategic Equality Objective 3, which refers to the Council identifying new trends and groups on which to focus recruitment?
I won't provide any such assurance. If I can find grant funding to support protected people who are protected under the Equality Act for their protected characteristics in the Vale of Glamorgan, I certainly will go for that money.
Thank you. Question 6 regarding the Barry Docks Incinerator, from Councillor Collins to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Collins. A demolition application decision notice was issued on the 7th of November 2025, which includes a requirement for further approval of the method and means of demolition in the form of a demolition environmental management plan. This must be approved prior to the demolition works taking place. No further planning application has been submitted for alternative uses of the site, and the owners have to date not stated what subsequent proposals they will seek consent for. However, we would expect any future uses to be within classes B1 or B2 or the use classes order, and would therefore accord with the current LDP.
Yeah, Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leader. I do have a supplementary. The withdrawal of Aviva and the company going into administration fortunately gets the council off the hook. Does the council now accept that officers were in error when dealing with the important questions relating to the environmental impact assessment regulations in both Barry Dock Incinerator applications?
Straight answer, no. It's the council has worked to object to the proposal at every reasonable opportunity without costing the taxpayer an absolute fortune. But I think it's plain to say there are people in this chamber who have fought this proposal from day one. Thank you.
Question 7 regarding the real living wage, from Councillor Goodjohn to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Discussions we've had with our own employees, many of whom live in the Vale, and wider research undertaken by the Living Wage Foundation provides powerful examples of the benefits of the adoption of the real living wage, both in terms of employee well-being and wider economic impact. This includes the positive impact on mental health and well-being, reduction in financial stress, improved quality of life, and reductions of families in poverty. This also translates to increased ability to spend within the local economy and the council's ability to attract employees from the local community to undertake key roles within the communities we serve. In addition to the financial benefits to employees and the economic impact stated above, research into those organisations who have introduced the real living wage has reported a range of business and wider economic benefits, including reduced absenteeism, increased productivity and improved employer of choice perceptions. Our own Equalities Impact Assessment, cited in our July Cabinet report, highlighted the broader economic benefits of accreditation, noting that since 2016, around 20,400 additional people in Wales have been uplifted to the real living wage, adding £141 million in additional income for low-wage earners. The Cabinet report also cited the recent Future Generations report, that's in 2025, which was based on extensive evidence, including research and analysis of well-being of Wales report, and identified the adoption of real living wage by public bodies as a critical step to reducing poverty. Thank you.
Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you, and thank you, Leader, for the response. Once again, how will the Council's new real living wage accreditation improve the wages of workers in the Vale of Glamorgan who are not Council employees?
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. I think there's two ways we can look at that. One is obviously we commission services from businesses, and we increasingly try to commission services from local businesses. As we move forward, I would hope that one of the criteria for procurement is that people are real living wage employers. But I think that going back to sort of some of the points that I made in the report, in the response, is that we hope that we can talk to other businesses in the Vale and help them to understand the difference that they will make to their own employees if they too adopt the real living wage. You know, it's interesting when you see some jobs advertised. You think, "Oh, is that job? Is that legal?" And it's totally legal. It's just that they're not paying real living wage, and you suddenly realise that people are earning £1 an hour less on what is already quite a low salary. So hopefully we will put it through our own supply chains, which is part of the accreditation, and also we will hopefully encourage other people to as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 8 regarding third sector funding, from Councillor Carroll to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. We have paid 5.6 million to date to the voluntary sector, including passport on grant and service level agreement arrangements as part of service delivery, and we expect to spend approximately 11.6 million in the whole 2025-26 financial year. Thank you.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The BBC, ONS and the Home Office are among many organisations who have withdrawn from the Stonewall Diversity Champions programme. Will the leader follow suit and commit to withdrawing the council from this controversial scheme?
No. On World AIDS Day, I think it's an appalling question to ask, and anything that we can do to support our LGBTQI+ colleagues, we will. Thank you.
Question 9 regarding railway station accessibility, from Councillor Franks to Councillor Wilson, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Thank you very much, Councillor Franks, for your question. The Council fully supports improved accessibility at all railway stations throughout the Vale. This includes identifying routes leading to train stations on the active travel network map. There is current consultation that members have been invited to feedback on, and it can be found on the Council's website. Whilst the Council has an element of control and influence over the highway and other public land, it does not have the same control or the same level of influence over the intentions or ambitions relating to land and the ownership and control of Transport for Wales and Network Rail. With regard to recent requests for access improvements, I can confirm that with the support from the Council, Eastbrook and Cogan stations, which are owned by Network Rail TFW, were submitted as part of the Wales nominations for the Department for Transport Access for All programme in Control Period 7, which ends March 2029. It was announced in March 2024 that neither station was successful in securing AFA funding, but Cogan made the top 10. There are plans being developed for a new transport interchange at Cogan, and this sits as part of the larger scheme on the Regional Transport Delivery Plan. This potentially includes accessibility improvements such as lifts and enhancements to the existing highway network. As part of the proposed improvements at Cogan, a survey is currently being undertaken by Transport for Wales on proposal for an interchange. This includes an online survey and a drop-in session at Cogan Carnation on the 2nd December between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And by the way, that's tomorrow.
Councillor Franks. Okay, moving on to question 10 regarding code of
No,
conduct.
hang on,
Oh, sorry,
hang
go
on.
on, Councillor Franks.
My apologies. Thank you for that history lesson, but I think the bids to the Ministry of Transport were quite a few years ago. What really residents want to know is, what are you doing now to improve access at Eastbrook Station? We have very strong policies about encouraging public transport, but one of the greatest obstacles in the Vale is getting over the line at Eastbrook. People with mobility problems, parents with buggies and the like, find the footbridge a dreadful barrier. What are you doing now to make matters better?
I'd be happy to discuss it with my officers and to see what we can do.
Thank you. Just to let everyone know, we are at 30 minutes now, so I'll extend that to 45 minutes. When we get to 45 minutes, the answers will come via email, okay? Just to let everyone know that. So we're moving on to question 10, Code of Conduct Review from Councillor Lovelock-Edwards to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lovelock-Edwards. Thank you for the question. I welcome the steps taken by the Senedd to strengthen standards, transparency and accountability, because public confidence in democracy depends on those values being upheld at every level. Members of this council, just like members of the Senedd, have a responsibility to ensure that the information that we share is accurate and that we correct the record when it is not. All members are bound by the statutory model code of conduct. This code must be adopted by every Welsh authority in full, ensuring that the standards expected of elected representatives are clear and consistent across Wales. As members will know, code of conduct training is mandatory, and group leaders also have responsibilities under statute to promote high standards within their groups. We continue to strengthen support for members with further code of conduct refresher training scheduled for next week. And a recent local government association session was held on misinformation. I would draw members' attention to the LGA's guide to disinformation for councillors, which provides practical advice on challenging misleading statements, whether by ignoring, informing, refuting or escalating as appropriate. But also, if you go on the training, you can find out when you are using disinformation, because it helps you to identify that. Last December, full council agreed a motion committing us to model respectful political discourse, challenge unacceptable behaviour and review both the standards of conduct expected of members in section 19 of the Constitution and the local dispute resolution procedure. These expectations are not new. Our Constitution already prohibits members from publishing or spreading false information about one another. And we have an established mechanism, including the ability to correct the public record through minutes to ensure accuracy when statements made in meetings are disputed. A working group of the Standards Committee is currently reviewing the local dispute resolution procedure, with future sessions focusing on section 19 and the standard of conduct expected of members. This work is ongoing and is expected to conclude before the spring of 2026, after which any recommendations will come to full council for debate. Ultimately, the public deserves openness and honesty from elected representatives. Strengthening guidance, expectations and accountability around misinformation is an important part of that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
No supplementary. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to question 11, accountability and decision making from Councillor Carroll to Councillor Burnett, Executive Leader. Question 11. Is that okay? Do you want to press your button?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Carroll. Thank you for the question. To understand the council decision-making processes and how decisions are subjected to scrutiny and debate, I would refer Councillor Carroll to the council's constitution, shaped by a range of statutory legislation and guidance, which outlines how decisions are made and how members can get involved in scrutinising and debating decisions which are being made by Cabinet and Council.
Councillor Carroll.
Penarth business owners say that new parking charges imposed by this council have slashed trade by almost 40%. Will the leader accept that she should have listened to concerns raised at scrutiny committees of this council about these charges instead of imposing them regardless?
There are many factors involved in whether businesses takings go up or down. I'm quite happy to engage in a discussion with the relevant business owner. What we tend to do in situations like that is have an open book discussion. It depends on what the period was that the comparisons were made, what the different factors were. Was it a wet week versus a sunny week? Were there children on school holidays or not on school holidays? What sort of things were going on in the vicinity? I think only when we fully understand the factors can we make a decision. But in the interim, as you've heard, Councillor Wilson is proposing that we take a bit of a break, think it through, and look at how those charges are re-implemented when we get into the spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 12, European Championships, from Councillor Hooper to Councillor Brooks, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hooper. A targeted campaign will be developed in the run-up to, during and beyond the event, which highlights Wales as a destination for followers, not only of football, but also wider audiences on the back of the platform this brings. Visit Wales are likely to develop on-location visual advertising, TV advertising, digital adverts, etc., as well as a toolkit for the trade to follow and maximising opportunities. We will be working with Visit Wales to maximise our efforts in promoting the Vale through the Visit the Vale during this time. We will develop content across platforms supporting the wider Visit Wales campaign to target these audiences and work with our trade in ensuring they are informed of and support campaigns for the benefit of their businesses. In addition, as partners of Visit Southern Wales, a 10 local authority partnership marketing the South East Wales region to UK and overseas group travel organisers. We will also be targeting European destinations through this campaign. We will also be attending Britain and Ireland Marketplace in particular in January. And at that we can ensure Visit the Vale will be integral to those discussions and highlight the close proximity and opportunities the Vale can offer to those visiting as part of the Euros and wider. Thank you.
Councillor Hooper, do you have a supplementary? We can't hear you, Councillor Hooper. I'm guessing that's a no? Okay, thank you. Question 13, flood risk management, from Councillor Carroll to Councillor Wilson, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll, for your question. The Council has identified a number of local objectives and measures in the local flood management strategy to help prevent and mitigate the risk of flooding in the Vale. These are focused on reducing consequences,
raising awareness, responding to events and prioritising investment in the most at-risk communities. Measures range from operational inspections and maintenance high-risk assets through developing new flood alleviation schemes. An example the Council is currently delivering is a Welsh Government grant-funded scheme to install property flooding resilient measures to over 180 residential properties and a number of community buildings in Dinas Parish. The Council also plays a key role in investigating flood incidents and ensuring the appropriate risk management authorities are aware of and responding to flood incidents. As regulators of sustainable drainage system, SUD's approval body net function, and as a consultee via the planning process, this also helps prevent additional flooding risks being created by inappropriate development. These activities are in addition to other day-to-day activities such as cleaning and maintenance on highway drainage.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Cabinet Member referred to highways drainage maintenance. Will the Council commit to allocating more resources for the inspection and repair of blocked drains to minimise the flood risks that they pose?
Thank you very much for your question. We have been doing additional inspections over the last few months because of the inclement weather already. Obviously, I have got a budget. You're fully aware of that. Councillor Carroll, and obviously I need to look at the budget to see if we can put more measures in, but if I can, I will.
Question 14, the development of sites in St Athan, from Councillor Haynes to Councillor Stiffenyanam, Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Haynes. The policy on industrial development in the Vale of Glamorgan is contained in the adopted local development plan, and specifically in policies MD1, MG9, MD15, MD16. And the Council would expect all development to accord with the requirements of the current LDP.
Councillor Haynes.
Yes, thank you for the reply. My follow-up question is, given that there is pre-planning consultation for a battery storage facility consisting of multiple shipping container units at Gilston on the Vale of Glamorgan Heritage Coast, do you agree that a development of this nature would be more appropriately sited on the brownfield sites referred to in the question?
I don't have information on that to be able to answer that with any with proper information. So I'm very happy to get you a written response.
I think we can squeeze in question 15, which is from Councillor Cowan to Councillor Carroll to Councillor Wilson regarding Llandough Hill.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll, for your question. There has been £15,000, £281, and 9 pence spent on highway maintenance works, and £62,488 and 54 pence on resurfacing.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Those are considerable sums of money, and I'm exceptionally grateful to the authority for incurring that expenditure because it was much needed. But despite recent resurfacing, potholes continue to pose a problem on Llandough Hill. What action is the Council taking to ensure that its suppliers are held accountable for any defective repair works that may be carried out?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Obviously, we have an inspection regime, but I'm happy to bring any concerns or complaints put forward to the relevant officers for them to have a look at it.
Thank you. We got all the questions done. Excellent job. Agenda items 12 and 13. I have no urgent items under part 2, none under part 2. I bring this meeting to a close. Nadolig llawn I chi gyd. See you all in the new year. Diolch yn fawr.
Night all.